Hello, boys. What torment would you like today?
I don't know. I'm kind of down for anything.
Just not like pitchforks. Not because they're bad, they're just... not good.
How about rats eating your organs?
I already ate the rats.
You ate the rats?
I ate the rats.
He ate the rats.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
You weren't feeding us!
It was horrifying. They didn't even get to finish my dress for the royal ball.
What?
Just mix it up a little, I guess. I'm not super picky.
Variety is the spice of life.
Afterlife.
What?
Hello, boys!
What the hell are you doing here? In hell?
Hell? This isn't hell! This is the basement! But never mind that. Did you see that Digimon I just caught? This game is amazing! I'm totally hooked!
None of this makes any sense. But I guess you saved us, after selling us.
That's right! Now get back to work! I need all of you to focus on this new fad of collecting fake anime things while I become a Beyblade champion! Later, boys!
I lied. I still hate him.
I want to be the very best, like no one ever was. To catch them is my real test. To train them is my cause. I will travel across the land, searching far and wide, each Pokemon to understand the power that's inside. It's you and me. I know it's my destiny. Pokemon.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 22 of the Retro Odyssey podcast. I'm joined as always by my fellow co-hosts, Steve, Ryan and Matt. Hey guys, how y'all doing?
Good morning.
Hello, not bad.
I am tired.
Yeah, I'm tired. I'm also a little bit hungry as well. So have you had a good week? Good month, rather. It's been a month since we last joined forces to have a chat.
I moved house, got married. It's been kind of nuts over here.
Well, congratulations. Pretty eventful month then.
Thank you.
So, like, half of the podcast is married now. So what we need to do, if me and Ryan kind of like split a plane ticket.
Well, for October's podcast, I was married. For November's, this month, Steve's married. So one of you guys need to get married in the next month.
Well, I was thinking we could kill two birds with one stone. If I can kind of like get a plane to America, then me and Ryan can get married. You know.
Well, I have to finish getting divorced first, but.
Well, we can work something out.
Yeah, it's legal now.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's fine. You'll be able to sort something out. So anyway, in terms of gaming, what have we all been playing? I mean, for me, I've been mostly playing Pokemon. The new Pokemon game, Sword and Shield. I went through on a Nuzlocke, and I beat the game on a Nuzlocke, which got a bit tricky in places, but I was successful in the end. And now I'm replaying the game, but properly. I'm going through it bit by bit and trying to build up the Pokedex and everything. It's pretty enjoyable. I won't go into too much details because, it's a Pokemon podcast. And I've also been playing Ring Fit Adventure.
How is that, by the way?
Decent. Surprisingly good. I mean, it's got like RPG mechanics and stuff like that, which sort of link together, but it's kind of addictive. I mean, I've kind of got some back problems at the moment, which is like muscular and things, so I can't do it too much. But doing it is also kind of good for my body because it also strengthens those muscles. So I'm only being able to do it in 15-minute sessions or so before having to take a break. But yeah, it's pretty good, to be honest. I'm feeling like a lot of benefit from it, and it's kind of addictive. I don't really like exercising or doing running, but like you move along by doing like jogging, and you can run to go faster, which you get more points and more experience if you do that. So I'm kind of more inclined to run rather than do light jogging. And the exercise are kind of good because you have some basic exercises, you've got some more energetic stuff, you've got some yoga style things, and the game gets you to do stretches before and after. And they're not overly done as well, so you're not doing it for too much. And it feels like a good workout experience. And there's some points where some of the exercises get a bit difficult. Like there's one level, and they introduce like this, like a zip line. There's a zip line, and you have to pull the ring apart and hold the ring apart to stay on this zip line while you're going down. And this zip line seems to take fucking forever. So I'm holding this, my arms are fucking shaking, holding this thing opening. And it's just
how tight is the ring? Like, how much tension is on that ring?
Quite a lot, really. Like, it's really well designed. Like, people have tried to put it through its paces, and it's got a lot of resistance. You'd think it was quite cheap, but, like, you can push it. Like, I push it, and I really push it to give some resistance, because I want that good XP, And, like, you pull it as well, and you can pull it quite forcefully, and there's no signs of damage or anything like that, and everything seems to react well. And in terms of like how the Joy-Con sense what you're doing for the exercise seems to be pretty good. The only issue I've had is that the one that straps onto your leg, it can kind of slide out of position if it's like on top of trousers. So I have to do it really tight for it not to slip. I think it's supposed to go on like shorts or something, or on bare leg, like under the trousers, I think is the intention. But I can never be bothered doing that. But it's quite good. Because you get XP, you can make smoothies and stuff to give you like extra health points back, or to do more attack damage. And the game's getting progressively more difficult, and yeah, it's pretty well done. I'm quite surprised. My only real issue is that it kind of feels like it might be kind of not necessarily overpriced, because it seems like quite a long game and it's a really well done game. But the actual price of the game is quite pricey. And I feel like this probably should have been like €60, even with the peripheral. But it kind of feels like Nintendo thought, well, we've got a well-made full game and a peripheral, let's just charge more money for it. And I kind of think...
How much is it?
I think it's like €80 normally.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. But like, I went into game and it was like €70 or 65 or something like that. They undercharged me by like €15. I went to the shop.
Stuff.
Well, they put it through, and it's like, oh, it's coming up at da price. And I went, oh, that's good. He's like, yeah, it's supposed to be this price, but the machine's saying this, so this.
Yes, it's this.
And I was like, all right.
Don't say no.
Yeah, exactly. She wasn't complaining. See, I wasn't complaining. Like, she knew full well that the price was supposed to be higher. I knew it was supposed to be higher. The machine's saying differently, so it was just like, okay, there you go. I think she kind of let it go through because, like, Game have an offer where you get, like, a towel or something, like a ring-fit towel that was supposed to come as a free gift, and they'd run out of them. So I think it was like, okay, you don't get your free gift, but you get it for cheaper, so there you go.
There's your free gift.
Yeah, your free gift is a discount. But yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, it's something as well that I can see being useful for the long term, even after like you complete the story. Like, the story seems to be pretty lengthy so far. It's, basically an RPG. But you can do like you can do individual exercises, you can set up your own exercise routines. The game kind of learns as well, like, what you're exercising, and can make recommended routines. It can set up alarms and stuff. It keeps track of like how much calories you've burnt, and your general kind of fitness stuff. You can have difficulty levels to make it easier or more difficult. It's really well done. I mean, like, I've tried Wii Fit stuff, with like the balance board and stuff, and it just kind of feels like it's there. But this surprised me. This surprised me a lot. Because when I first saw that trailer and they introduced it, I expected it to be garbage. And then the more I heard about it, the more I thought, this actually might be useful. Because like I'm getting old now and I need to keep physically fit, but I'm also quite lazy. And even though there is a gym like down the road, I don't really have that much incentive to go to it. Whereas if you give me a video game and you get me to do an exercise routine for like experience and to actually progress in a game and do well, I'm more inclined to do it. Like it's getting me to do things like fucking squats. This game's had me doing so many squats and I'm not complaining. It's just like, okay, I'm knackered, but yeah, I'm going to do squats to open this treasure chest. Like why I'm squatting to open a treasure chest makes no sense, but still, I'm doing it. But yeah, it's really good. I mean, if you kind of feel like you need to do exercise and you need to get into a fitness regime, and you feel a lack of incentive to go to the gym or pick up sports and stuff like that, then I'd say it's definitely worth it. I mean, it's cheaper than a gym subscription or like, you know, joining a sports club or whatever, or sports equipment. So even though it's more expensive than a normal game, I think if you got it and you wanted to do like an exercise regime, it's probably going to be quite cost effective, and it's, you know, it's quite good, to be honest. It surprised me, and
it's working up a sweat.
Yeah, and like what prompted me to get it is I saw some videos where they got like proper gym instructors and gym trainers to actually try it out, and they were actually quite surprised because the game was giving you quite good instructions as well. It's kind of making you do, you know, good exercises. It's instructing you on how to do it well. It's telling you when you're doing it wrong. It's, you know, telling you when you should breathe and whatnot. It's giving you a variety of exercises, so you're not just doing one thing. You're, you know, doing constant different things. And like even with, it doesn't start out that way. It starts out you can do what you want, but like a couple of worlds in, you start unlocking the ability to do extra damage to enemies based on colour. Now, like red enemies, if you do red exercises, it does more damage. And obviously, the exercises with different colours for different parts of the body and different types of exercises. So it encourages you to mix up attack styles against enemies by having this kind of, you know, extra damage output against these enemies. So the game's kind of saying, yeah, you should probably do some exercises like this.
I might have to look into this.
Yeah, it's quite good. As I say, if you're looking to get into a fitness regime, it's certainly given me the incentive. I've never had any incentive to do exercise, but when I'm done with the session, it's because I feel like I can't do more because of, you know, my back issues at the moment, and I feel like I have to give it a rest. But then I'm also kind of thinking, can't wait till the next time. Like, I've not done it, well, I didn't do it yesterday, but like today I kind of think I want to get back into it and progress a little bit more. It's good. Anyway, what about you guys? What have you guys been up to?
I've mostly just been playing Smash. They dropped Terry Bogard in the last character of the fighter pack a couple weeks ago, and he's pretty fucking great.
Yeah. They should be announcing the final one soon, shouldn't they?
I think he was the final one. They should be announcing the new fighter pack soon.
Terry Bogard was number 4, wasn't he?
No, he's number 5.
Is it?
I'm pretty sure. Let me think. Let's see. They released.
We had Joker, we had Banjo, we had the Hero, and we have Terry Bogard.
Oh, maybe he is number 4. Okay.
I mean, he's number 5 for DLC, but there was the Piranha Plant.
Right, okay, maybe that's where I was going because Piranha Plant wasn't part of the fighter pack.
Yeah, he's the bonus one. So they need to announce one more, which I imagine will probably be at the Game Awards, maybe, unless they have like a direct this month, which is possible because it's been a while. I heard rumours that Gordon Freeman was going to be a fighter, and then I just found out like this morning that was just like some guy lying.
Oh, did they clarify that it wasn't going to be?
Yeah, some guy just went, nah, I made it up. It would have been cool though. I mean, he probably wouldn't have fit in that well, but I mean, we have Snake.
Bayonetta doesn't really fit in the world either, and Snake certainly doesn't.
Yeah, so I mean, it wouldn't exactly be against it, but with Half-Life Alex and stuff coming out, which we'll touch upon later when we do the news segment. There's the potential that Half-Life, or at least Valve, are starting to become more active again. So the chances of Half-Life games coming to Switch, I mean, it's a possibility. Because as well, they've done like famous franchises and stuff like that from a variety of different generations and different genres. And having someone from a first-person shooter, as iconic as Half-Life, it would fit. Something like Doomguy or Gordon Freeman, would kind of be a good one for something else, especially if they were to release like a Half-Life collection with Half-Life 1 and 2 on it, which would be neat. Hell, just give me Half-Life 1, I'd be happy with just the first one on there. Any Half-Life on the Switch would be good.
Right. Wouldn't be a bad thing.
Yeah. We'll see what the final one is. So far, I've only picked up, obviously, the Free Piranha Plant and Banjo. Which, what do you think to Banjo, by the way?
I liked Banjo. He's really different compared to what...
I tried playing with him for a bit, and I just couldn't get into him. I kind of like the idea, but every time I practice with him against the AI, I always lose. So I'm very, very bad.
He's weird. He's weird because he has a move that turns into, like, it completely changes. Like, you can go and shoot an egg, but then you can hold it, and then suddenly you're holding Kazooie like a rifle.
Yeah.
And you're walking around just shooting eggs. He has 3 jumps, but he can completely act out of his pad, kind of like Mega Man, because the jump pad doesn't do anything. He's just a little different.
Yeah, I think he's just one of those technical ones, as you say, where you kind of have to get used to using him.
But Terry does a thing where he's kind of like Ken and Ryu, where he has all his manual inputs.
Yeah, but aren't they like proper fighting inputs as well?
Oh yeah, they're proper. Yeah, they're proper manual inputs just from the game. But you can also just use, the B button.
Oh, okay. So you can just do simple versions, or you can do like the proper fight.
Yeah, you can do the proper versions, and you get there's a small advantage to using the proper versions. Like, I think it's mostly you have like invincible startups and stuff like that.
Oh, okay. That's pretty cool.
And he has like a light like all his specials have the light version, and then like the heavy EX version.
Oh, okay. That's neat.
So he's quite fun. And what's really cool is his adventure mode. Well, classic mode. It has you going up against kind of all-stars mode, where it's like, oh, we're going to drop in one person, you're going to fight them, then we're going to drop in another fighter, and we're going to drop in another fighter. And it's all stamina matches.
All right, so they've basically just done like they did with the Ryu one.
Yeah, and it's like, that's a lot of fun. Yeah. Also, he got his own King of Fighters stage, which is wholly unique in that it's just a flat plane. Like, it's literally just ground level flat plane. But instead of being able to just walk, on normal stages that are just flat, you can walk off and go to the blast zone. You can just walk over to your death.
That's cool.
There is a glass barrier that you will break once you reach a certain launch speed. So you'll get bumped up against this wall to, simulate like a classic fighter stage. And that's also really neat. But yeah, that's what I've been playing. So, who else?
Well, I've been playing Man of Medan, mostly. It is the latest game from Supermassive Games. They're the guys that did Until Dawn. And it's essentially the same kind of thing. It's a horror game where you control like various different characters and you've got to make decisions for them, and there are like various quick time events and stuff like that. It's supposed to be quite short. Basically, they're doing a trilogy of these games. I believe they're calling them the Dark Pictures Anthology, and it's going to be 3 shorter games rather than like 1 longer game. And obviously this is the first one. I think it's meant to be kind of like between 4 and 6 hours. I'm currently 3 hours in, so I'm probably like just over halfway or so. And it's really good so far. It's essentially Until Dawn on a boat.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to it. I just, with everything going on, I haven't been able to pick it up.
I was able to find it in the Black Friday sale for the PlayStation Online for like $15.99. So I picked it up. And yeah, basically, after I finished Until Dawn, what I really wanted was like more Until Dawn, and that's basically what this is, just on a boat instead of on a mountain.
I definitely checked that out because Until Dawn was one of those that like a friend of mine and I played it. One of us making decisions, one of us holding the controller. Played it with my wife, where she was just watching me play and helping me find stuff. So it's good type of game for playing with people.
Well, actually, Man of Medan does actually have a dedicated co-op feature as well.
Oh, I forgot about that.
It isn't like a split screen thing, so you do actually have to have separate systems.
They couldn't even do what they did for their last game and have you use your phone?
Not as far as I'm aware, but the good thing is, if you have a friend who has PS4, you can send them this code, and they don't actually have to buy the game. They just have to download the trial version.
Oh, that's good.
And as long as they're playing with you, then they can like play along without having to buy the game.
Oh man, it's the DS download system for PlayStation. That's awesome.
So I think the way it works is you kind of like, you're playing as different characters, and the other player is kind of like doing something different in like a different part of like the boat or whatever section you're in, and you need to like confer back and forth about stuff, I believe.
Okay.
I think that's how it works. I mean, I've just been playing it solo, but I believe that's how the co-op works.
See, I was thinking they would utilize the cell phones again, because the last project they did was Hidden Agenda, which was, you get a bunch of people around with their cell phones and you can make decisions and stuff, just like Until Dawn.
Yeah, I've not heard about any kind of phone functionality. It may very well be there, and I've just not heard about it.
Yeah, it's definitely one to check out.
But yeah, that's mostly what I've been playing, plus more Binding of Isaac, more Final Fantasy 14,
obviously.
Every month. Next on the docket, though, is Nier Automata, which I bought in a Black Friday sale for PlayStation 4 for like $17.99. So after I finish Man of Medan, I'll be playing that.
I've heard from several people that the game is very good.
Yeah, I basically want to play that because there is a crossover raid with Final Fantasy 14 that they released recently, which is pretty good. And I kind of wanted to get the backstory on that, so I've been after it for a little while, and $17.99, I'm happy to pay that. So,
right. Yeah, it's good to reason as any.
Yeah. So yeah, what have you been playing there, Stephen?
Mostly just, I haven't had a whole lot of time for gaming the past month, but mostly picked up Minecraft on the Switch. Was messing around in that, Binding of Isaac, and then Pokemon Sword. So not a whole lot going on here.
If you ever want to chill on Minecraft with on the Switch with like the Mario stuff going on, which is wacky, I'm always down.
Oh, that's right. I forget you spend a lot of time on there.
I do. I haven't played in a few months, but
yeah. Oh, the other one, I started The Outer Worlds on Xbox Game Pass, but then, got super busy and, haven't gotten back to it. But that one's really good. I'm really looking forward to getting through that.
Yeah, I've heard good things about that. I know there's at least one more thing that Ryan's played this month, actually, because I watched his live stream of it. You did the Mario 64 All-Stars stream?
Yes, I did. So there is a charity called Extra Life. It's I'll call itself a charity since they work with the Children's Miracle Network mostly. They have a huge event once a year called Game Day at the beginning of November, where basically they do a massive 24-hour stream and a whole bunch of people get involved. And me and my team did, but this year they got DDoSed. By someone or some people, which is like, who the fuck tries to shut down a children's charity? Like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
This is like pediatric cancer and stuff, right?
Yeah. Children's Miracle Network works really close with like St. Jude.
Yeah.
And hospitals like that. And it's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? So I got real mad because I did a playthrough. I did a classic Mario Marathon. And my rule was no skips, no warps, no glitches. And if I was allowed to backdoor a room, that was fine. But if there was an actual, like, it counts as a warp, like Star Road in Super Mario World, it wasn't allowed. Whistles weren't allowed. Stair glitches weren't allowed. Stuff like that.
So, I mean, does that include, like, exit course and you go back to the main entranceway?
Yeah, that's fine, but basically
Okay.
the point is I had to beat the game legitimately, and
Right.
I played through Mario 1, 2, 3, World. Sunshine took me a really long time because I hadn't played it in so long, and I only had
Right.
about an hour left, so I just did like a 16, 17 star run. The next day, which I broke my rule to go through Super Mario 64. The very next day, we get an email, our team does, going like, hey, by the way, this happened, which explains why, like, the website was constantly crashing stuff, and I got really mad, and about a week later, I decided to play through Mario 64 120 stars. I was just since I cheated on it for the main events, I decided to go 100%, because, like, those charities are still, like, the charity links and stuff, and this whole thing is still going up for this year all the way to the end of December.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, I played all the way through Mario 64, and I did it in about 6 hours and 40 minutes, which is no record time, but I felt it was pretty solid. I felt that was still pretty adequate.
I only managed to watch for about an hour or so, but it was it was a fun time. I believe you were on there with your brother, weren't you?
Yeah, my brother showed up for, I don't know if he was there for all of it, but he was there for a piece of it. Yeah, so, which is actually funny because right before that, literally a couple days before that, I did a race, 120 stars, Mario 64 with a friend. They were going through Ocarina of Time, and I was not practiced up in Ocarina of Time. I'm like, you know what? I bet I can beat Mario 64 about as fast as you can get through Ocarina of Time. And I was right. So now I've been going through, and I'm like, how fast can I beat Mario 64? I'm not going to do, like, actual world speed records, but so far I've done a 16-star run in, like, 35 minutes.
Right.
And I know I can probably get through the game in 5 hours. I found a scratch that needs to be itched, apparently.
I'll definitely check out some more of your streams if you're going to be speedrunning and stuff like that.
I need to get a analog capture setup, because when I played on the Wii U Virtual Console, and while that's adequate, it's not as good. There is input latency and
right
touchiness on the stick. So once I get an analog capture setup, I'll probably just be doing that.
One thing you can do for that is because I basically have a standard capture card, HDMI input, and I capture everything with that because I have the stuff to convert the older signals into HDMI.
What converter box do you have, and does it split or is it just straight up convert?
Okay, so the big one I have, it's an 8-input hub that's got 2 composite, 2 component, 3 HDMI, and a VGA, all going into one HDMI port. Okay. That's a JTech something or other. I can send you the link for that one. I picked up another one that's just a straight composite HDMI. I'd have to pull it up and see. But I've gotten it all to work. So, I can point you in the right direction to get that set up efficiently.
And how's the video quality on that?
I'd have to go back and look. I don't remember it being too bad. I know the JTech doesn't seem to mess up the quality at all. Like, we were recording NES games with that back when my friend and I were doing Let's Play videos, and it still looked fine.
Nice. Yeah, I'll have to look into that. Yeah, I do need a solution.
Yeah.
So, all right. Nice.
Okay, so if that's everything that we've been playing, I think it's time to move on to the news section. Pikachu! Okay, so time for the news this month. We have a few topics to bring up here. The first one, kind of like a continuation of one of the topics we talked about last month, with Doom Eternal being delayed until next year. And basically they said anyone that pre-ordered will get Doom 64 for free as like an apology. We kind of like speculated that Doom 64 would be like still coming out this year like they said it would be, but no, they've put that back until next year again. So that's not good.
Whoops.
I'm sure it's finished. They could just give it to us, but they're not gonna.
I don't know why. That doesn't make any sense. Doesn't seem terribly complicated, and yet here we are.
So yeah, they're just gonna release it at the same time as Doom Eternal now. Which
I mean, corporations.
For twice the Doom.
Yeah, it's a shame because I do definitely want to pick that up when it comes out. I have actually been replaying the PC port that I've got, and it is a really good game. It's a really good game, and I was able
Doom
to be able to
64.
pick up the official thing. But yeah, no, a few more months yet.
More like Doom: The Eternal Wait.
Yeah.
Ha
But anyway, on to the next news topic then. There is a new SNES game which has just been released. It is called Yo-Yo Shuriken. You play as a ninja and you have like waves of enemies coming like from the sides. Kind of like classic twin stick shooter kind of like setup really. And yeah, it has just come out on physical format for a 30-year-old console.
Well, here's the real thing, because it's like, yeah, occasionally these old consoles do get re-releases. Like a couple years ago, there was Super Turrican Director's Cut, or whatever it was, that came out, and that was released for SNES. And then Capcom did a re-release of Mega Man X for Super Nintendo, which was super cool.
We got Star Fox 2 from the SNES Mini.
It's true that they did release that, but as far as physical formats go, is this game actually like licensed by Nintendo? Like, is this a proper release, or is it just like we don't give a shit? You can put games on there if you want.
Oh, I don't think it's actually licensed or anything. I mean, the artwork doesn't have like the seal of quality or anything like that, and it's not like on a proper grey cart. It's actually on a red one.
Still cool though.
Yeah, anyone can pretty much release games for old consoles. I mean, Nintendo's not going to go out. Well, it's Nintendo, so you wouldn't know. But
they might.
But people have released games before, like in a similar way, and they've not really had any problems with it. You can also buy it as a ROM as well.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want the proper package, you can get it with box, cart instructions as well. I'm not actually seeing a price for the full thing, but the ROM is like $5.
That's
okay.
That's pretty cheap.
But yeah, I'm not seeing a price for like the actual cart. I'm just looking on the site now and I don't see it, but I would expect it to be quite a bit more than $5.
Probably, yeah, no, because just the cost of producing that cart is probably like a solid $15-$20 now, just because either you're using old carts, in which case it's cheap when you're destroying old games, or you're having to produce proprietary fucking hardware to hold the software.
This is definitely like a custom cart, you know. It isn't a reused old one. It's like translucent red.
Oh, so
Well,
it's
I was
one of
talking
those.
more about the chip inside,
All right.
Oh well, yeah,
because you can buy replacement carts pretty easily.
yeah. The
There's several
replacement shells are
companies that sell
pretty
'em.
common.
It doesn't really say, to be honest. Even doing a Google search, I can't actually find a shop selling it, unfortunately. But like I said, the actual ROM is available for $5 if you wanted to check that out.
How fun.
So another bit of news that we have is the Rad 2X cables, which are a new line of cables for retro consoles. They're expensive, but I've seen reviews on them and they are meant to be really, really solid. You're looking at about £50 for each cable, and it's like a HDMI cable. And like I said, reviews have been really, really good. Very low latency, very good quality. They have TurboGrafx 16, they have Mega Drive Genesis, Mega Drive Genesis Stereo, Mega Drive 2, Sega Saturn, they've got Neo Geo, PlayStation, Super Nintendo, N64 and GameCube, because they all use the same connector, so it's just one cable for the lot. That's the whole list.
Hey Ryan, I think we may have just solved your issue.
See, my big thing is I really don't like playing my analog consoles on an HD TV. Like, call me
Oh,
a
well.
purist.
In that case, you're just being picky.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and that's why I kind of want to do a signal split, which is pretty easy to do for an analog composite component, just to get a splitter.
Right.
Those are cheap as hell.
My setup has always been the end result is HDMI and using
Right.
HDTVs for everything. So,
But I have a 41-inch CRT that's in excellent condition in my game room.
man, your back must be in terrible shape.
It's actually not as heavy as it looks. I mean, it's still a pain to move. It's better with two people.
Right.
I've got a 32-inch CRT Sony Trinitron, which is one of the later flat screen ones that they did. And that almost killed me, getting it up 2 flights of stairs.
Oh, God. I didn't have to carry mine upstairs. Jesus.
If I ever leave this house, that TV isn't coming. That TV's staying right where it is.
Either that or you pay some movers to do it for you.
They would die. Okay, well, we have one more piece of news, which is...
Not Half-Life 3.
Yeah, Half-Life 3 isn't coming out. But here, have a VR game because fuck you.
Just because it's VR doesn't mean it's bad. I mean, it might be bad for some people, but it doesn't mean it's bad just because it's VR.
It's bad because very few people are going to be able to play it because you need VR and VR's not cheap.
It also makes a lot of people
Right now.
sick.
Yeah. If you look at the trailer, it does actually look good. And I'm hoping that some crafty modders manage to mod it so that it can be played off VR.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know how VR stuff generally works and whether you can un-VR things easily enough. Because, I mean, a lot of VR controls are done with analogs and whatnot. So I suppose it can't be too difficult.
I mean, there are games that have VR versions and console versions, like Resident Evil 7, for example.
Yeah. I mean, I can't see Half-Life Alyx, though, being available for non-VR stuff. Because when they did the announcement, they said it's for the VR da-da-da-da-da, and it can be used with these other VR devices. So it seems like it's going to be made exclusively as a VR game. But I reckon that there's going to be some Half-Life fans out there that are going to mod it so it can be used without. I imagine. I hope.
Right.
Because I want to play it.
I'm assuming this game won't continue the story of Half-Life 2. Otherwise, they
No,
would
it
have just
seemed-
made Half-Life 3.
It's 1.5, so basically it's set before Half-Life 2 during the conflict before Gordon Freeman comes. So you play as Alex, and this is the fight against the Combine before Gordon Freeman turns up. The G-Man's going to be in it, the suit dude, and maybe we'll develop his story, so we'll find out more about him and what he is. But with regards to, like, everything else, I can't imagine it will advance much story. But either way, it still looks kind of cool, to be honest, and makes me wish I had VR. But my laptop's not good enough for VR. And paying for a good rig, and paying for VR, and paying for the game, nope.
Yeah, not gonna happen.
Exactly.
Not for me either.
But as I say, I reckon there's going to be some crafting modder out there. The only way I'm going to be able to play this game is if they do a surprise announcement that it's going to be available for Labo VR.
They might.
They're not. Let's face it. Labo VR is for bollocks, and that's it. Because you can't even strap Labo VR to your head. So how would you even control it?
Not well.
Exactly. So there we go. But still, we have a game that came out in 2004 and is getting a prequel.
Yay.
So that's
It's about time.
It is about time. I mean, to be fair, the biggest news about this, for me, isn't necessarily it's another Half-Life game, because it is in VR and I'm not going to be able to play it. But the fact that Valve are doing something other than just letting Steam give them money. Because, quite frankly, they've not actually done anything apart
Anything.
from
They've added hats to...
hats to Team Fortress and basic maintenance for Steam. Like, not even necessarily adding stuff, but just maintaining stuff and, I suppose, organising the sales. and getting money, and that's all they've really done.
What was their last game? Portal 2 or Left 4 Dead 2? One of those two.
No, they actually did something else. Was it Dota or something that they did?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
They did a Dota game, which I think was the last thing, but that's a multiplayer thing, so it doesn't
Yeah,
count. Yeah. But I think that was Dota 2, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think that was another 2 that they made. They like the number 2. Yeah, and then before that we had Portal 2. And I think... and then we had Left 4 Dead 2 before that. So yeah, their game-making days are in the past.
Portal 2 was very good, though.
Portal 2 is excellent. And I actually like it more than Portal 1. But Portal 1 is also excellent, so...
Left 4 Dead 2 was also very good.
Yeah. I mean, like, the Left 4 Dead games I enjoy. And they're fun to play multiplayer, but I can take or leave them. But I think they are good for what they are, and they are enjoyable multiplayer experiences. And I can see why people like them. But as someone who doesn't really play multiplayer stuff that often, I kind of have little patience with it anymore. But they do make good games, so even if this is just a sign that they're going to start making games again, because they need something to give themselves the edge over like the Epic Store and stuff, then hey, fuck it, that's good news. As long as it's not all VR, which would suck.
But yeah,
Good
I
stuff.
think that's all of the news stories that we have for this month, unless anyone has any others.
Nintendo is still not releasing any NES or SNES games on the Switch, so we're currently at 3 months with no update to the online service. So they're making that money certainly worthwhile. Maybe they'll drop a huge update or something for Christmas.
You know they won't.
They won't, but
Maybe they're working on maybe they're working on an N64 online.
Maybe, and then they'll drop like 5 games and then not update for a year.
Right.
But we'll see. They'll probably do some at Game Awards, which I think is in a couple of weeks, a week and a half. I want to say.
Who cares?
I don't know. Like the Game Awards are shitty and stupid, but they do have game announcements. So
I mean, there's a reason Jim Sterling calls them the game advertisements.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just Jeff Keighley shilling for several hours.
I say the good thing is that we do at least get some kind of announcements and new stuff so often. So I do like those dates, not necessarily for actually watching or paying attention, but just looking for news sites for news announcements. Hopefully got a direct or something more interesting, so that we've actually got something a bit more substantial to talk about for the end of the year.
But yeah, anyway then, with the news out of the way, it is time to move on to our main topic for the episode. So we will take a short musical break, and we will be back with that soon.
We'll catch you all later, you might say.
For
It's the
voting.
same joke you made at the end of the last episode.
Yep. I can't think of any other Pokemon joke.
Pika pika!
Okay, so straight into our main topic, we have Pokemon. It's a very
Pokemans.
Pokemans, yeah. Or Pokemon, I suppose, because we're going to be talking about more than one Pokemon game and more than one Pokemon. We've kind of themed this to tie in with the new Pokemon games, which came out, 2 weeks ago, was it? 2 and a bit weeks or so. I don't remember the day when they came out, but Sword and Shield came
November
out
15th.
November 15th.
Hot
Yeah.
damn.
About,
So,
two and a bit.
about 2 weeks.
Yeah, 2-3 weeks. So yeah, there we go. We have new Pokemon games for the Switch, which are the first mainline Pokemon releases on a console. Obviously, we have had spin-off games on consoles before, but these are the first mainline ones.
But with
So,
the
but-
advent of the Switch Lite, is it really?
Well, I suppose so, if you're playing on a Switch Lite. But yeah, if you're playing on a regular Switch, then this is a proper home console release. So we're going to celebrate that by talking about Pokemon. So, Pokemon. What's your history with the series? When did you start getting into Pokemon?
I never did, honestly. I think I was like a little bit too old when the Pokemon craze first kind of kicked off. It's just something that kind of passed me by.
I mean, you have gone into it because you do play Pokemon Go, so you have some experience. Was Pokemon Go your first Pokemon experience?
Actually, yeah, I think it might have been because that came out before Let's Go, didn't it?
Yes.
So yeah, I think that probably was my first Pokemon experience. But that is a very, very different beast to the console games.
I mean, it is still, your first experience with Pokemon, because I imagine there's a lot of people who started with, other games that weren't the mainline ones. I mean, you've got so many spin-off titles, and I imagine things like maybe Pokemon Snap, for example, I can find bringing in a certain audience that maybe weren't aware of Pokemon before, just because of its nature of being more of a, I suppose, a photography game more than anything, or an on-rail shooter in a way. And you've got all these different spin-offs, like we've had pinball, we've had all the different Pokemon mini games and stuff. That I can imagine there's a lot of jumping off points for people when it comes to Pokemon. So having your first Pokemon experience as Go isn't necessarily too obscure, I suppose. I imagine it's probably the same with a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's basically something to kind of like just do with my phone when I'm bored. I can just go on and, as I've said before, there's a gym like within range of my house. I like the aspect of filling out the Pokedex.
Which really is the main draw of Pokemon. I mean, that's the kind of thing that keeps people hooked, and was the tagline for like many years, gotta catch them all.
Yeah.
Until recently when you couldn't catch them all. Gotta catch a few of them, I suppose is the new tagline. But yeah, I mean, that is the kind of draw. It does have this addictive nature, because whether or not you're catching them or just encountering them, you fill out the Pokedex, and it is quite addictive. I mean, for me personally, I started with Pokemon Blue. Wasn't necessarily in, when was it, 90s? I want to say 94 or 92 or something. When was the first? 97? 95?
Red and Green came out
98.
in 96 in Japan.
Was it 90? I thought it was,
probably 97.
Was it like 97 or 98 here in the U.S.?
Yeah, the US, we got Red and Blue in 98.
That seems very late. I was kind of veering towards the earlier part of the 90s, just because 97, 98 is quite late on, because that's like almost N64 era. Or that is in N64 era.
Yeah.
So looking back at Red and Blue and comparing those to like N64 games seems kind of strange, I suppose. But yeah, I suppose you're right. I don't think it was necessarily straight away. My friend had Pokemon Red on the Game Boy, and then, I don't know, maybe half a year later or something, I got a Game Boy with Pokemon Blue. And then we got that fancy link cable to trade between each other and battle. It always would end up being like Mewtwo's and versus Mewtwo's and things like that, because, children.
Right.
But yeah,
my god tier can beat your god tier. Oh, okay.
So yeah, my first experience was kind of back in the day. Not when it originally started, but definitely with the first gen. Even with stuff like Pokemon cards. Pokemon cards came in and I did collect them for a bit. Although when I started collecting them, it felt slightly childish. So it was definitely on the kind of cusp of when I was getting maybe a bit too older for, Pokemon cards at least. But yeah, I was an early adopter. And I think you were too as well, Steve?
Yeah, so I was full on into Pokemania. I got in 99 when Pokemon Yellow came out. And, I mean, I had all three of the original games. I got all three of the sequel games. I watched the anime. I had the trading cards. I had the trading card game video game. Like, I was full on into Pokemon.
I mean, it was strange. It was like this massive phenomenon. And it's really bizarre how it took the world by storm, because I remember people saying, oh, it's just a fad. And here we are, like, however many years later, and it's still going. and it's pretty much as strong as it ever was. I mean, the sales of the recent Pokemon games, despite all the controversy, have been like a resounding success. You've had the Pokemon Center recently in London, which have had like, what was it, 7-hour queues or something?
Oh, yeah.
What is the Pokemon Center?
Well, Pokemon Center is basically just a Pokemon shop. I think there's one in Japan and maybe one in New York or something.
Yeah.
There's like so few of them. And they opened one recently in London, but they only opened it for like, I don't know, a month or something. And it just had ridiculous queues. People were going there at like early hours of the morning, and there was like an average of, maybe 7 hours wait or something to actually get in the shop. And pretty much everything sold out so quickly.
I wouldn't queue for 7 hours for anything.
No, neither would I. But like, I mean, stuff like there was London-specific stuff like a fancy Pikachu in like gentleman's clothes, which obviously sold out really fast and are probably going on eBay for a fortune at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's a bit crazy because they kind of thought, for a few days it's going to be really busy, and then it just kept like that until it closed. So it was silly. Like I say, they had to basically just kind of have people there saying, okay, the queue's closed now, and they'd close the queue like 11 o'clock in the morning or something, just so that everybody could get a chance to get in the shop before closing time. It was ridiculous.
Like I said,
Exactly.
Pokemania.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Pokemon has been like pretty strong throughout the years. It's had its ups and downs. I mean, obviously, like the original release in the 90s was a big point, and then probably the release of Pokemon Go spurred the next verge of Pokemania again. And then obviously it's kind of had a bit of a lull in the middle, but even in its lull, it's still been pretty strong. I mean...
Well, and you look at it, the first games sold very, very well. They were some of the best-selling games on the Game Boy.
Yeah. I mean, when I had a Game Boy, that was the only game I had. I think I remember getting Pokemon Yellow at some point, and then I think it was just Crystal. I don't think I got Gold and Silver. I think I ended up getting Crystal when Crystal came out. But yeah, that was pretty much all I had on the Game Boy was Pokemon.
Yeah, Yellow was my first Game Boy game. So the sequels actually sold really well. I don't remember if they sold as much, but I want to say they got close. There was a big dip in the third generation because a lot of us fell off and they made some changes that people didn't like.
Well, there was a generational gap as well, which, as you say, like a lot of people kind of who were in the original Pokemania, got a little bit older, so maybe grew out of it, which is certainly what happened to me. And then you also had like a console generational gap as well. So the massively successful Game Boy, you then had to get a Game Boy Advance if you wanted to play Generation 3, which, I mean, did sell well, but
it definitely was one of their weakest ones. I mean, I can say I personally dropped off there. Like, I didn't play the Gen 3 games until I went back years later.
Generation 3 gets a lot of love, but honestly,
it does. That's where I started.
That's honestly the weakest one for me. I don't like Generation 3 at all, at all. I think the main games in the series in Generation 3 are bearable at best. And the spin-off games like Fire Red, Leaf Green, I think are the worst Kanto remakes. Personally, I think Let's Go is the best of the Kanto games, followed by
obviously
like Yellow, and then Fire Red, Leaf Green are just kind of okay. I'm not to say that the Pokemon were bad. Generation 3 did introduce some good Pokemon. I just don't particularly care for the games that much, for varying reasons.
Yeah, like some of my favorites came about in Gen 3. It was a dip, and I think the thing that hurt them the most was not being able to transfer your Pokemon from the original games, just because of the difference in hardware. So it was a dip, and then Gen 4 was massively successful. Gen 5 was a bit of a dip. Gen 6 and 7 were trending upwards. It's been up and down for 20 years.
Yeah, but it's still been despite it being like up and down, it's still been pretty successful, even in the down
Oh
period.
yeah.
I mean, comparatively compared to other games and other series, it's still been like really popular.
I mean, like, I think when somebody figured it out, Pokemon is Nintendo's second most profitable franchise.
I mean, Pokemon is bigger than Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
I mean, if you actually look at franchises, the Pokemon franchise is bigger than, Mickey Mouse, which is ridiculous considering Disney is like the empire at the moment.
But I mean, Disney
Well-
doesn't really do anything with Mickey Mouse, though.
It doesn't, but like Mickey Mouse is such a huge franchise. But the thing is, like, Star Wars is a huge franchise as well, especially now with the resurgence. And Pokemon's bigger than Star Wars. Pokemon's bigger than Mario. Pokemon is like the biggest thing in the world. And it's ridiculous.
Well, like, you nailed something when when Nintendo's like, okay, we own Pokemon, and then they're like, this is so big, we need to make the Pokemon company to handle Pokemon all by themselves because we can't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, because Pokemon isn't just the games, it's like everything. You've got, obviously, the mobile games as well, you've got all the merchandise, there's the anime, which, I mean, the anime is massively successful, too.
Mhm.
And, like, loads of people watch the anime, and
There's still people that play the trading card game competitively.
oh yeah, of course. How could I forget the trading card? I mean, apart from the trading card game, which honestly, like, there's very few people I know who actually play the trading card game, and the people I know who play it, I don't know like in real life. I just know of them through the internet. People I know that collect the Pokemon trading card games just collect them, and they have an album of them, and that's their extent.
I know a couple of people who actually play them. Like,
They
quite a
actually
fair
play the
bit.
trading card game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, it's quite interesting. I've played the trading card game for the Game Boy, and that's a lot of fun. And I've kind of dabbled in some of it. I'm still not overly familiar because the rules have changed throughout the years. But it's actually a really cool card game, and it's a shame that a lot of people collect the cards for collection's sake rather than actually playing it, because it is quite a cool card game.
I do see the appeal of the card game. I mean, when it comes to card games, I'm more into Magic the Gathering, but I can definitely see the appeal of it.
Yeah, I mean, it is a well-made card game. But Pokemon as a franchise is just so huge. It's like literally everywhere. It's not surprising it's so big. And honestly, I think it also leads to one of the problems with the franchise. I think the franchise is so big that it makes the disappointing parts of the franchise so much more profound. I mean, I didn't talk about it during the introduction segment because I wanted to save it until this segment, but we're at Generation 8 now, and the games still contain like a lot of problems
Right.
that have been continued throughout the years. But even just in terms of general polish, considering Pokemon is like the biggest thing in the world, there are some parts of the game that look nice, they look pretty. But then there are other parts that look like garbage. Like the introduction, as soon as you exit your house and you see this house with all the flowers and stuff, that looks nice, that's pretty. And then you step into the wild area, and it just looks murky, and it's sort of like GameCube era graphics. It's really dodgy. And
Right.
you activate online, it just goes at like 10 frames per second. It just stutters all over the place. And you just kind of think, considering the amount of money that the Pokemon Company has, this game should be a lot more polished. Because you look at games like Mario Odyssey, and despite not liking Breath of the Wild, you look at Breath of the Wild and how polished that is, and you kind of think Pokemon is bigger than all of these put together, and yet has a lot less polish. It's actually more similar to the 3DS games than it is for a Switch game. I think maybe the problem is the Pokemon Company themselves. I think maybe they're not allocating enough resources to Game Freak.
You know, if they stopped the practice of creating two almost virtually identical games, just purely for what seems to me as a money-grabbing tactic, then they'd have a lot more resources to spread around.
But I mean, they are two identical games. So, I mean, does it really take that much more time just to say, okay, this Pokemon are just for this game, this Pokemon are for this game? I mean, they're not really including anything renowned or amazingly different.
Occasionally a minor story change.
Yeah,
Right.
occasionally there might be a minor story change, but usually the story changes are in the third editions when they make like a revamped Super Edition.
Yeah, until they stopped making those.
Until they stop making... Well, I mean, Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon is basically like a third edition, apart from they split those into two.
Right, but that's the thing, is like, we got black and white, and instead of getting gray like we should have, we got black 2 and white 2.
But Black and White 2 was a sequel, so I don't consider it the revamped version. But then, like, Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon isn't a sequel.
Same thing.
That is actually just the same thing, but...
And I still haven't forgiven them for not giving us Pokemon Z.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? It's such a fucking no-brainer.
They had it set up perfectly. They had the X Pokemon, the Y Pokemon, and the Z Pokemon.
Yeah,
They didn't give it to us.
Yeah, the Pokemon
Zygarde was a Pokemon to catch.
And also, they had certain story elements that were unfinished.
Yeah.
With, what's his face, that giant guy? They were just, these unfinished story elements. And it's like, you've got a Pokemon beginning with Z, you've got unfinished story elements. Just Pokemon Z, please? People just thought it was in the bag, and it never happened. It was weird. Instead, we got Aurus, which, is fine. To be fair, I think Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire are definitely better versions of Gen 3. I don't particularly care for Gen 3, as I mentioned before, and I think they did legitimately improve some things. I still don't love them, because I don't think the story and certain elements of the game are particularly great. But, Aurus is fine. But yeah, anyway, like with the version differences, I don't think there's anything amazingly different to say, okay, half the team are working on this game and half the team working on this game, because they are basically the same game. Even with Sword and Shield, they have exclusive gyms, but the gym challenges are just the same, but they're slightly reskinned. They've not even changed, other elements. For example, like the town for the first exclusive gym matches the gym type in Sword perfectly fine. And then for Shield, it's sort of okay, but sort of not. But then the second exclusive gym makes zero sense, because you've got these two typings, which I won't spoil because I know like Steven hasn't got there yet. But there are basically like these two types. Now one of them fits perfectly towards the region and the town. Like, it makes perfect sense. It fits exactly. But then the other gym type, it's just like, what? Why is this gym type? It just feels random. And I kind of feel like even if they just reskinned the town and just changed various different parts of the dialogue for some of the NPCs, it could have worked. But instead it just feels completely out of place. So the work they've done in making these version exclusives different is so minimal that I don't think that really affects it that much.
I don't know. The version argument is an interesting one for me because, I mean, having been there at the beginning, the original intent was to get you to socialize and, find a friend that has the other copy. My parents actually did it with me. Like, I got yellow, they got red and blue, and we played together.
You link table, you shared with each other, basically.
So I can see the appeal still being there in terms of, oh, hey, I got this one, my best friend got the other one, we're going to, do this together. But it's, things are just so much different now. It would almost be easier to just have one unified version.
I think because of the different typings, I like the idea of version exclusive gyms. And I think that having the 8 gyms completely different So, like, the typings are completely different. Would be nice. I mean, in Pokemon Sword and Shield, the first 3 gyms are fire, water, grass. So, I mean, you could keep those 3 the same for both of them because, those reflect the typings of the initial stars. But then the other 5, you make completely different. And you don't just make the leaders different and the typings, but make the gym and the gym challenges different. So people have a reason to buy them apart from the exclusive Pokemon.
Right.
Because now it kind of feels pointless. I mean, once you got Sword and Shield are different, but with Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, you had 800 Pokemon. And there are so many Pokemon that trading is still beneficial, even if they only had one version of the game. Because there's so many damn Pokemon that sharing with other is actually a good thing to do. You've got trade evolutions, you've got so many Pokemon to find, that collaborating with other people is still a decent thing to do. And I think that now if you have version differences, again, you can't make them too different because you don't want to make people think, oh, I have to buy 2. So having things like version exclusive gym typings or something that doesn't change the story per se, I think would be acceptable. But
a lot of fans will buy 2 anyway.
Yeah.
And
they sell them as a double pack now.
That's why I think it's cynical.
Yeah, I think now it's cynical because there's less reason to do it, but they know people will buy both, that they'll do it anyway. Like, you mentioned the double pack. The price of the double pack is exactly the same as buying the 2 individual. So you don't even get a discount. If they did it for, say, $100 or something, and gave you, a little discount for getting both, that'd be okay, at least. But no, it's we know you're going to buy both anyway.
Yeah.
I honestly think that's probably one of the issues with Pokemon as a series in general, is it has got kind of cynical and has kind of got set in its ways with a lot of things. And I think, more than anything, I think the series needs maybe a reboot to make things fresh. I mean, before we go on to the issues, I think now might be a good a time as any to actually start talking about one of the games that we covered. So we can actually talk about the early days of Pokemon and just how it was initially, and then start comparing to how it went on from there and what's changed and what hasn't. I mean, obviously with the initial games, I think we have touched upon those before, at least just passing by in conversation. But the game that we chose this time was Crystal, which is the 3rd version of Generation 2 after Gold and Silver. And personally, it's my favourite of the series. How did you guys get on with it? I know that, Ryan, you jumped in at Generation 3, so this one will have, passed by you. And obviously, Matt, you started really recently, so definitely this will be new for you. So, Stephen, what were your impressions back in the day with Gen 2, basically?
I absolutely loved Gen 2 when it first came out. I loved having both regions available in the same game. I liked a lot of the new Pokemon. I really, really enjoyed Gen 2. It was the perfect logical progression from the first generation. They stepped everything up so much, and they're just really good games. They're still enjoyable to play through. I mean, even you go back to Heart Gold and Soul Silver, they're still really good games.
Yeah, I mean, you touched upon it briefly before, but the interesting thing with Gen 2, which they've not really done, I mean, there have been instances where they've referred back to other games, but Generation 2 is actually a sequel to Generation 1. It continues directly. Because you're
the same characters.
Yeah, it's got some of the same characters from there. Because I'm not sure how far, the others got. But you start off in Johto, which is a different region. But it's a neighbouring region to Kanto from the first generation. And there are certain elements that link in, for example, Team Rocket and Professor Oak, and whatnot. Oh, and Bill, of course, because Bill still does the PCs at that point in time. But then later in the post game, it's like, hey, we're going to give you a ticket and you're going to travel to Cantor. So you end up going to the region from the first game and you do the gym challenge from the first game. You face all the 8 gym leaders. They're still mostly the same characters. You do have a difference with Koga because Koga's in the Elite Four. So it's actually his daughter Janine that's in that gym. But it's still mostly the same with slight variations, but you're essentially playing through the first game again. And then you encounter Blue as the final gym leader, who was your rival from the first game. And then the final conclusion, the ultimate part of the post game, is facing your original character, which is, a great way to finish this story. So the two games are tied very closely together. This is a sequel. This is basically like Black and White 1 and Black and White 2 in that sense. It's a sequel. It's not just another generation.
Yeah, and I think that was the right thing to do at that time because, the wave was still going strong from the initial release. You still had people that were, clamoring for more, and giving them that direct sequel that also had so many elements from the original games. It helped maintain the cultural phenomenon even longer, and honestly is probably a big part of why it stuck around for so long, because they did the exact right thing at the exact right time.
Yeah, and it was such a surprise. I mean, I would compare it to Symphony of Night, because Symphony of Night, you effectively beat the game, but then, here's a surprise. You've now got the second castle, you've got the inverted castle, and you're going through the castle again. I mean, it is a lot shorter because you have most of your abilities at that point, but you've still got this second part of the story. And in essence, Gen 2 is like that. It's like you beat the gym challenge and it's like, you thought things were over? Nope. You're going to basically play through the first game again. You've got all the HMs now, and you can traverse and do whatever gyms you want in whatever order, but you can effectively play through the first region with extra stuff. And that, for the time, was like quite an amazing thing and such a surprise. And it's funny, because we've not really had a post game like it since. And Pokemon games have, I think maybe it was it Gen 5 that had a good post game? I can't remember if it was Black and White 1 or Black and White 2, where it actually had a post game with stuff to do in it, like an actual stuff that had a reason.
Black and White 2, I know, had the big tournament where a bunch of people from the series past showed up.
I think it was Black and White 1 then that extended the plot beyond the main game, and then Black and White 2, as you say, you had the tournament, but then you had some extra things as well. So they did have solid post games, and then you had Gen 2, which had a phenomenal post game, which has never been really beaten.
Right.
Until I suppose Heart Gold and Silver, when they did that and then add some extra stuff. But yeah, since then, like, the post game has just been like, here's a battle tower, have fun.
I would say the closest they've gotten, aside from Black and White, was Sun and Moon, when they had the Ultra Beast show up after you finish the story.
Yeah, Rainbow Rocket and stuff as well.
Yeah.
And all that stuff, yeah.
So yeah. I think definitely Sun and Moon, Black and White, and then Gen 2 are probably your best post-game experiences for the series. Yeah. Which, I mean, Black and White, it makes sense because that was supposed to be, the reboot of the series. And then people were so upset, they're like, okay, we'll go back.
I mean, it's kind of nice. I do kind of appreciate what they did with Black and White 2, because with Black and White 2, you're playing through the region again, but it's like, okay, now you've got a variety of different Pokemon, so you don't have to stick with Generation 5 completely. So even though you're playing through the same towns and stuff, with a different story and whatnot, and obviously there are changes, you're playing with different Pokemon. And I do kind of appreciate that. But I do think probably Generation 3 caused the big crisis that we have at the moment with Pokemon. With Generation 2, you had an extension to the Pokedex, and you had the extra Pokemon, but you have a neighbouring region, and it is a sequel to the story. But then Generation 3, you're in a completely different area. You're in...
It's the region of Japan.
Yeah, it could be a different region of Japan. I don't remember. But either way, it's a completely different area. There's no connection. And I think they should have used that point to establish a new Pokedex and just kind of done a cut-off saying, okay, these Pokemon are Gen 1 and Gen 2. And because you couldn't transfer them to Gen 3 anyway, they should have just cut a line there and saying, okay, those two games are connected. These games are not connected. So we're going to have brand new Pokemon. And I think that would have been a good idea in the long term because of that lack of connectivity between Gen 2 and 3. But also now you've got a problem where there's so many Pokemon. What do you do? And now we're at a problem where, Game Freak are saying, oh, there's so many Pokemon that we can't make them all. And, part of it's valid, part of it not for varying reasons. But it is still kind of an issue. Pokemon isn't dying anytime soon. Pokemon is still as strong as ever. And if you keep adding, 150, 100 Pokemon every generation, you're going to get to a point where it's ridiculous. And
next generation, we should hit 1,000.
Yeah, and I think that just adding them up and just keep on going and going and going, they've reached a point where there's sort of a crisis because where do you stop? They're trying to address
because
it
once you
now.
hit 1,000 Pokemon, the Pokedex reaches critical mass.
Yeah, it's
And it
kind of
blows
iffy.
upon itself.
But then you're at a point where it's like, well, who do we leave out? Because I mean, my favorite Pokemon is Furret, and
Pikachu. You leave out Pikachu.
well, that's the thing. I mean, like they're saying now, oh, we're going to leave out some Pokemon, but not other Pokemon. But then in the next games, we're going to take other Pokemon, but not other Pokemon, which we might have included before. And it's like, you say that, but when is a game where you're going to leave out Pikachu? When is the next game you're going to leave out Charizard? That's never going to happen.
Well, here's the thing: is it makes sense that every game wouldn't have any Pokemon, or every game wouldn't have any. Every game wouldn't have every Pokemon because you're in different regions of the world. Theoretically, like when you have Kanto and Johto and they're right next to each other, kind of makes sense. That'd be pretty easy to get all the Pokemon.
Yeah,
but like
even then, there's a lot of Pokemon that you can only get in Kanto when you're there. So some of them, obviously, people have brought over and whatnot, and they have integrated.
Yeah. In Gen 6, between Oris and X and Y, you could literally catch every single Pokemon.
Yeah, and it's just like, well, this is based in Paris, and the originals are based in Japan.
Yeah.
And yet you can still get every single Pokemon. In fact, Generation 1 Pokemon are probably more common in Paris than they are in Generation 3, for example, which is another area of Japan, which makes, less sense. And I kind of think that they should have addressed that sooner, because now you have an issue.
What I think they should have done was the transition to the Nintendo Switch was the perfect opportunity to do that hard reboot and just have, for lack of a better name, you have Pokemon 2, where, you start over completely. None of the originals are here. The franchise restarts.
I like the idea of the regional variants. The ones where those Pokemon have been introduced to that region and they've adapted. So the fact that you've got like the Alolan Pokemon and now you've got the Galar Pokemon, I like that idea. So
I love that.
I would still say, okay, have a hard reboot. You can bring some Pokemon in, like have a fucking Galar Pikachu or something, but no original Pikachu. You have like this Galar form which has been introduced in the past and obviously has adapted and is different. You know, you've got these Pokemon that, you know, you've got Galar, a Farfetch'd, which then evolves into Sirfetch'd. Again, that's fine. I kind of think doing those kind of things and having these, you know, Pokemon that have adapted to the region, you can do that with a handful of them and keep that idea. But as you say, I think a hard reboot would have been a good idea, because I think the series needs it. And I think having a hard reboot and managing it better should have happened.
Yeah, and then transition to home console on the Switch was the perfect time to do it.
Yeah, I mean, because what you could do is have your hard reboot, and then fans of older Pokemon wait for the Let's Go variations, because you've got like Diamond and Pearl remakes, you've got the Kanto remakes, you're probably going to get other remakes too. You know, there are other remakes, so fans of those Pokemon will be able to play the remakes with their favourite Pokemons at that point in time. But for the mainline games, they should have just done a hard reset. Because, I mean, Jim Sterling covered this in one of his latest videos. The problem is, you've got a have and have-nots. And you've got some people that like some Pokemon and some people that don't like some Pokemon. And some people are going to be happy, some people aren't. Like, a couple of my favourite Pokemon got in, but like a lot of the Pokemon I really like haven't. And that's kind of disappointing. Because
whereas me, you know, I love Farfetch'd. Like, I loved Farfetch'd from the beginning. So for me, you know, Pokemon Sword is just fucking amazing because, you know, my boy Farfetch'd is actually viable now, and I can have him in my party, you know, and it doesn't make things more difficult.
Yeah. And, you know, it is cool that they're taking some obscure Pokemon as well, like Zigzagoon, and they've got regional variants. And hey, here's a third evolution for it as well. And that kind of stuff's great, because, you know, for all the 5 people in the world that like Zigzagoon, you know, you've now got something which is not only cooler, but you've actually got a viable use for him, because he's got a third evolution and he's actually quite strong now and has a better typing than, you know, normal.
Well, a real good example of that was Sun and Moon when we got the Alolan forms. In Gen 1, I never used Vulpix because, you know, why would I use Vulpix when I can get the Charmander line? Yeah. But Alolan, Vulpix, and Ninetales, that becomes the greatest dragon killer I've ever seen.
And I think those kind of ideas, the regional variants, are good ideas to help give strength to, you know, these kind of more obscure Pokemon. Like, one of my Pokemon that I really like is Corsola. And not only does it get an evolution to Cursula, but it's also Ghost, which is my favourite typing. So
because
it's like,
we killed it.
And it's just like, yeah, that's great. I like the idea that, you know, Corsola's in this game, and not only is it better, it gets an evolution, and it's changed typing to a typing I really like. Brilliant.
Yeah.
But where's my boy for it? And that disappoints me. Like, even though Corsola's in the game and Aegislash is in the game, where's my for it?
Oh, is Aegislash in?
Well, yeah, I mean, Aegislash is a sword and a shield. Of course, it's
that's true.
A shield. If they left,
I didn't think about that.
But then again, there's other Pokemon, like fucking Swanna's not in. Like, swans are so big in England that they're protected by the Queen. Why is Swanna not in the game? It makes zero sense.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, it's just weird. There's some things that are omitted from the game, and you just kind of like, I don't understand why, because they would have fit perfectly.
I think some of that might come from a game, you know, based on England being made by Japanese developers.
Yeah. But then, I mean, with those, having your hard reboot, you could have brought in Swanna, but made a regional form. So maybe it's not just water flying. Maybe it's, because it's protected and stuff, it could be maybe fairy or something, because it's seen as more of a mythical kind of Pokemon because it's so special. You could bring in Aegislash, but instead of being a ghost, it's, I don't know, Steel and fucking Dragon or something because dragons are English.
Right.
I don't know. But you could have brought in Pokemon from older generations that fit the region perfectly and just kind of given them regional variants and given them more of a reason to be there.
But we gotta have Charizard.
But we have to have Charizard. And
I'm into burst your bubble, guys, but I think we've wandered off topic and got back to talking about how the Pokemon company has sort of dropped the ball.
But, I mean, again, that's talking about the series as a whole, which I think with Gen 2 it made sense, where you have that continuation and you've got like extensions to Pokedex. And I think that Gen 2 did that perfectly. But then when they transitioned to Gen 3, I think that's when they made the mistake of continuing it, in my mind.
It literally just boils down to them just trying to feed this Pokemon machine.
Yeah.
But I mean, while we're talking about Pokemon and stuff, I mean, what did people actually think to the Generation 2 Pokemon? Getting more on topic and going away from like the Dex issue.
I think Pokemon generations were all gold up until about Gen 5.
How
when
dare
they
you?
introduced the ice cream.
How dare you?
Actually, I like Vanilluxe quite a lot. And I'm happy that it was in Sword and Shield. But the thing is, you say that, but then you look at all the generations and there's some wonky Pokemon. I mean, Voltorb is just an upside down... Voltorb's a Pokeball, and then Electrode is just an upside down Pokeball. And then you look at some of the others and it's like, Pidgeot is just a bird. There's nothing more to it. It's
a special bird. No, it's just a bird. It's like, it's not a Pokemon.
Some more fucking birds.
It's just a fucking pigeon. That's all it is. There's nothing more to it than that.
It's like you imagine. It's like someone's like, "Oh my god, I found this dragon-looking thing and it breathes fire," and someone's like, "And I'll fight your Pokemon." It's like, "What do you got?" "I've got a bird."
Yeah, and like Rattata is just a rat. So you've got like these kind of uninventive designs, really. And then obviously, like, you've got other Pokemon that are, got a bit more interesting design. Like, obviously things like Tentacool and Tentacruel are based on jellyfish, but they're a bit more than that. Aerodactyl, it's a bit more inventive as well because it's sort of like this flying dragon bird thing. It's like a dinosaur, but it's a bit more inventive.
Yeah.
People complain about fucking Garbodor. It's like, oh, it's a heap of trash. And it's like, well, Grimer and Muck is just a pile of toxic waste. And toxic waste is a big problem in Japan, which is why they created Grimer and Muck. And obviously Gen 5 is based on America. That's why you have trash. Because because toxic waste isn't as much of an issue in America. It's more all the fucking garbage.
Yeah, it's the volume of refuse over here.
Yeah, so it makes sense because really, if you complain about Garbodor, you have to complain about Muck as well because they're basically the same thing, but for that region.
Honestly, there's some smart motherfuckers at Game Freak.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that there are some Pokemon that aren't as good, but the Pokemon that some people complain about, I think, tend not to deserve criticism. Like you've got...
Yeah, I mean, like, Klefki, it's
people
not
complain
that
about Klefki.
bad.
It's not. Because as well, like, the Pokedex lore and stuff fits the Pokemon. And, again, if you're going to complain about, oh, this is just a set of keys that's been made into a Pokemon, again, look at Generation 1. Voltorb. It's just a fucking Pokeball that's been turned into a Pokemon. That's all there is to it. Again, you've got examples from other generations which people don't compare about, and you can kind of say it's not lazy. It's always been like this. They've always had Pokemon based on animals. They've always had Pokemon based on inanimate objects. And how is Klefki, going from the same generation, how is Klefki cool how is Klefki not cool, but then how is Aegis/amazing? One's a set of keys, one's a sword. Just because
I love
swords are cooler than keys, but it's still the basic principle is the same. It's just an inanimate object that happens to Pokemon. So, yeah, I don't think Pokemon designs have necessarily got better or worse. I think people have just got a bit iffy, and they're very protective. They're protective about earlier designs. They think there's nothing wrong with any Generation 1 Pokemon, but now suddenly this Pokemon, this is rubbish.
See, I think there's some great ones and there's some okay ones in every generation. I'm not going to say any of them are straight up bad, because, I mean, yeah, there's some that are not interesting, but then, you know, not all of them can be, you know, freaking Go-Goat or Malamar. Like,
I mean, there are some that are maybe less inventive because they're very similar to other ones, which happened a lot in Gen 5. So I can see why, you know, Ryan might have, you know, mentioned that as being a weaker entry. But Generation 5, as you initially said, Black and White 1 was sort of a reboot. So
yeah, it was supposed to be a soft reboot.
So you've got Starly, and you're like, well, that's basically just Pidgey. Yeah, I mean, it is supposed to be just the regional bird. So
yeah,
it was supposed to be that region's Pidgey, but better, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can see why there are some issues with some Pokemon being similar. But I think the only problem is that there are some Pokemon that are just shit, you know, competitively. I mean, you've got stuff like Quillfish, which is cool in design, but it's just really weak. You know, you can use it, and it's fine for, like, early game, but there's nothing much you can do. Again, with, like, as you were saying about Farfetch'd. Farfetch'd is kind of cool, but at the end of the day, you catch a Farfetch'd, and there's a point in the game where he becomes quite unviable. You catch him, and then it's like, I can't use him because he's just not that good. Even when I put a stick on him, which, you know, you got in Generation 2 when you got holdable items, yeah, he's a little bit better, but he's still not good enough to, like, properly use.
Yeah.
And I think that's the issue with some Pokemon, is in terms of viability and strength. And I think that, you know, if a Pokemon's weak, like Farfetch'd, it should have just had an evolution to make it better.
Now, one thing I will say is I don't think we needed a something that looks like Pikachu in every generation.
Well, I mean, you say that. I think the Pikachu clones aren't too bad, because I think to the Pikachu clones, and Pichu was kind of the thing for Generation 2, because the baby Pokemon in Generation 2 are crap. Let's just face it. The baby Pokemon in general aren't great. Togepi.
How dare you say that about, wow, I can't even remember the name now.
Togepi?
Yeah, Togepi. How dare you say that?
Yeah, I mean, Togepi is cool.
I think you just proved his point.
They introduced that in the anime, so, you know, it's quite cool, so that's nice. And Pichu is cute as well, so you've got this kind of pre-evolution to Pikachu, but the rest of them are just there for the sake of it, and they just waste Dex entries, really. They just waste.
I mean, I think Tyrogue was used interestingly, but
yeah,
he's about the only one.
I think Tyrogue is fine because it connects the Hitmonchan, Hitmonlee, Hitmontop, and it makes it so that you can get whichever one you want and you can breed for them. So that's another one which I think is fine. But I get the point of the baby Pokemon, because breeding was such a big thing in Generation 2, because it was something they introduced, that they had the baby Pokemon as a kind of a way to make that a bit more important. Like, oh, I've just bred this Chansey, now I have this fucking stupid baby Pokemon. You know, it's fine as a concept, but they're not that good at baby Pokemon. And I think that in terms of the actual Pokemon in Generation 2, the baby Pokemon are probably the weakest. But I also see why they're there.
Well, going back to your question about which Pokemon
What you like?
I do actually like. I mean, obviously I can't really talk about the viability of them, but I'm just looking through the Pokedex now, and I do like Sudowoodo. I really like his animation, at least in Go. He has like a really nice spinning animation. Umbreon is really cool.
Do you know about the whole basis and the whole story behind Sudowoodo?
Well, I saw him in Crystal blocking a path, but no one knew that it was actually a Pokemon. It just said, hey, I saw that tree move or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, it's supposed to be a tree. And then what happens is you spray it with water, and then suddenly it starts attacking because it doesn't like water. And the whole thing is, the whole concept behind the Pokemon is that it's a rock type. And it's trying to disguise itself as a tree to fool people into thinking it's a grass type, so it doesn't get attacked by water, basically. And if people attack it with fire, then it's not going to do much because it's a rock type. So Sudowoodo is basically like effectively a fake tree. It's imitating a tree in order to basically protect itself, so it's effectively a defense mechanism. Like, I really like Sudowoodo, and I like Sudowoodo basically because of that. I find it really fascinating, just the whole idea behind it. As you say, Umbreon's really cool, but it's interesting with Umbreon because that was another gimmick, as well as like the baby Pokemon, is you had the day and night cycle, and Umbreon and Espeon were effectively the tie-ins to the day and night cycle, because that's how you evolved Eevee into one of those, is that you got it to high friendship, and if it was day, it was Espeon, if it was night, it was Umbreon. Anyway, sorry for the interruptions. You mentioned Sudowoodo, and I like Sudowoodo a lot, so I had to interrupt.
I also really like Ursaring. I just like the look of it, just a big bear with a circle on it. And
The bear.
And Teddy, so cute.
Ho-Oh is quite cool as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it does have some really cool Pokemon in that generation. And there's even some Pokemon that have lasted the test of time, like, obviously you mentioned about Farfetch'd being like your favourite, but being quite underpowered. I mean, Dunsparce is another one that's a fan favourite, which people say needs another evolution.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd say that.
Or Shuckle.
Or Shuckle. I mean,
A lot of people like Shuckle, and, not much you can do with it.
Yeah, I mean, thing is with like Shuckle and Dunsparce is that they have gimmicks, and those gimmicks can make them viable, which is something that differentiates itself from, Farfetch'd, is that if you have this one gimmick on that Pokemon, then you can sort of make them work. But yeah, like in Generation 2, Shuckle and Dunsparce are quite popular, but again, kind of need something more happening to them.
Is Shuckle the turtle-looking one?
Yeah, it's like in a little shell, and it's got like the little legs coming out of it and the tall head. So it's like a weird turtle.
Yeah.
That's cool. And then you've got other stuff. I mean, like, I don't think I dislike any design from Generation 2. People complain about stuff like Girafarig, but I like Girafarig. It's the weird, like, horse type thing. It's like a giraffe horse, kind of.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. It's like a tiny giraffe, so it's got, like, more of the shape of a horse, but a giraffe colour. And then it's got a brown ass with a weird face on it.
Everyone's favorite Santa bird.
Oh, yeah. That goes back into some Pokemon not being good competitively. Whenever you're talking about Pokemon not being great competitively, I think Delibird is definitely one that fits into that category.
Yeah.
It's got one move like fucking Present, which half the time heals Pokemon and half the time does like shitty damage to them. Jesus Christ, that's a crap Pokemon. But the thing is, like, the design is kind of nice. It's just rubbish Pokemon.
You know who's not crap? Caesar.
Yeah.
Caesar was one of my absolute favorites from Gen 2. It was another situation where, like, I really liked Scyther, but, aside from a couple of moves, Scyther wasn't being used much. You turn him into Caesar, and he's got Steel, Bug, he gets a Dark move, like... Oh, he's in my team every time I play Gen 2.
Yeah, I mean, you've got like a Skyzor and you've got Steelix as well, which was another evolution from Gen 1, which was kind of nice.
That's the other thing is I really like the steel type. So the fact that they put so much emphasis on it in Gen 2 because that's when it was introduced.
Yeah, they introduced what, Steel and Dark? Just
Steel and Dark.
Well, since our focus is on Gen 2, I think it's only fair to have a quick chat about the bullshit that is Whitney's gym. Who else here has had just notorious, just fucking rage at that gym?
I understand the rage, but I've never ever had an issue with Whitney's gym.
I've never had a problem with her.
Yeah, I can see how you can have a problem with her, and if I've had unlucky Nuzlockes where I've had to face her with a team that's not particularly well equipped, I can see how you can go in ill prepared and basically get destroyed by rollout. Because, yeah, rollout is just ridiculous. So if you don't deal with that mill tank quickly enough, then it can do some serious damage. But yeah, I've never really had a problem with her. And then obviously, once I know the kind of shit that she pulls, then I have even less of an issue with her now.
Well, it's partly the problem is the game doesn't. You have a really small chance to get optimal Pokemon to face up against Miltank.
Well, there is a trade in Goldenrod City where you can get them a chop. And obviously,
can you?
Yeah,
Yep.
It's in the department store. So there is actually a sort of hint, but I think they probably could have made it a little bit easier. Maybe had a couple more Pokemon leading up to that gym that would have been useful, like maybe some more fighting Pokemon or just something that resists the rock typing. I mean, obviously you've got the cave with like Onyx and stuff, but I mean, like Onyx is fast but weak as shit, so I mean, it's probably not going to do a lot. But
I mean, here's the other trick: bring a female Pokemon.
I mean,
But
you can
half the gimmick.
you can bring that in, but like I went through the actual like percentages of like what was the chances of you getting a Pokemon that was effective and also female, and like the game is geared to not give you a female Pokemon that is also effective against Miltank. Like it's like a 2% chance that you'll run into a Pokemon that is female and effective.
that's the thing.
It's either you have to go in there weak-handed, or you remove half the gimmick and just get totaled by rollout anyway.
That's the one thing with like Gen 2. They introduced the genders, which is, great, because before you just had Nido King and Nido Queen, which they separate, which kind of made the gender split a bit weird. But anyway, you had the genders, but then it was really difficult to get female Pokemon for like a lot of the early game stuff. And like the starting Pokemon, I think they're like 75% likely to be male and 25% likely to be female.
Oh,
And
more
it's
than
de-
that.
Yeah, it might have been more than that. I can't remember, but it's like heavily geared towards being a male Pokemon. And they've never changed that. Like even in the new games, it's still overwhelmingly, more likely to get a male Pokemon than a female. The ratio is exactly the same. And even the Pokemon that are quite feminine, like, what was the name of it?
Was it the fox?
No, the one I'm talking about is the water Pokemon. It turns to Primarina. Popplio.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so there's Popplio, and it turns into Primarina, which is basically, a ballerina seal. And it's
Right.
still, like, massively more likely to be male than it is female, which is fine, but it's just kind of like, why isn't it 50-50 for the starters? It's iffy. And it kind of feels like with Whitney, with Attract and Rollout and Milkstring, it kind of feels like it is there to troll you. Now, maybe the reason why I haven't had issues is because I got lucky at first and then I learned her tricks. But it does feel like it's geared towards catching people out. So I do understand why people have issues, even though I've never had them myself.
Well, see, like, and I was mad because my friend just went through a Nuzlocke of Silver. And, like, he got to Whitney's gym, and I guess rollout just kept on missing. So he took out Miltank in one try.
Yeah. And the thing is, Miltank is so bulky as well that you really need to have a good Pokemon in order to take it out one try.
Yeah, like, well, I was just saying his first try at the gym, he just went,
right, I'm taking this booger out.
Yeah, I'm not, and just kept missing.
Yeah.
It's like, well, Jesus.
That's good.
I have beaten that gym 4 times, because I've played through Crystal, or I played through Silver. I played through Soul Silver 1.5 times. And I got to Whitney's gym here. Partly because this the half time I was playing Crystal again. I was just refreshing Crystal, and you're like, no, not Crystal, I was playing Silver. And it's like, no, you got to go play Crystal. And it's just like, goddamn, every single time is just like attract eliminated by rollout. I have to do that fight like 3 times before I make it through. It's my favorite fight to bitch about.
I mean, that's pretty much, across the fan base.
So what about the gyms in general? I mean, I'm sure you've probably realised this. I mean, certainly you will, Steve, but one thing they did in this game was in Red, Blue and Yellow you had particular gym typings. And in these ones, all the typings in Gold and Silver and Crystal are all different typings to the originals, which obviously is because you go to Kanto in the post-game, so then you face those typings. But yeah, what did you think to the other gyms?
Personally, I only did the first gym because I was having issues with the game, but I actually found the first gym really easy, but I'm guessing that's by design.
Well, like, some of them are quite easy and some of them aren't. But yeah, I do have issues with the gyms, personally. The main issue I have is not necessarily to do with the difficulty, but more to do with the selection of Pokemon. Because you find that the vast majority of the gym leaders won't use any Johto Pokemon, so they don't use Pokemon from Gen 2. Like, I think Falconer has, Spearow and a Pidgey or something? Spearow, Pidgey and Pidgeotto, I think. I can't remember his team, but I think they're just Kanto birds. And it's like, why? We have flying Pokemon. There's like Hoppip you could use. There's obviously like Hoothoot. There are other birds. Hell, you've got fucking Gligar. If you want to be a real challenge. There are other options. And they just use Gen 1 Pokemon. Like even the Ghost Gym uses Ghastly, Haunter and Gengar. And it's like, you introduced one new Ghost Pokemon. Only one new Ghost Pokemon to this game. And you don't even use it in the Ghost Gym. What the hell is going on? It's just silly. Because you have like all these potential possibilities and you just use Kanto Pokemon. I think that even though the gym typings are fun, I think their teams are not very inventive, shall we say. So that's one of the issues I have.
I didn't dislike the gyms, except for the one. I mostly my approach to Pokemon in general is to pick like 2 Pokemon, level them up as high as I possibly can within reason, or maybe not even within reason, and then just one-shot as much stuff as I can all the way through the game.
That's a good tactic.
And then if I come across stuff that I am at a clearly type disadvantage, then, that's why I have a second one. And then I just switch out and do the same thing. I don't play the games optimally, usually.
I mean, neither do I. I find Pokemon that I like, and I can combine into a team to cover my bases, and that's it.
And then that's kind of where some of the issues arise, is that you tend to do that, unless it's a Pokemon you find where you think, oh, that Pokemon looks cool in a new game. You probably stick to a particular team, you get some to cover your bases, and then you stick to them. But that often makes you quite over-leveled, and it makes it a little bit easy.
In X and Y, I was like, oh my god, I'm going to have as I found them, I'm going to have a team of just Dragon Pokemon. And that was great. Until I got to the Elite Four, and one of the Elite Four does all Fairy Pokemon.
And you're like, I can't do anything.
I still beat her.
But it was tough.
But boy, were they dropping like flies.
But that's the thing, though. I mean, when it comes to Pokemon, the difficulty isn't that high, which, is disappointing, but not great. But it feels like the only way to change that difficulty is by setting yourself challenges, doing mono-type teams like all dragons, or, doing Nuzlocks and things like that. But there's no other way to do it. Like, even in Gen 5, in Black and White 2, you had the option to unlock an easy and a hard mode. But the way to do it was weird. You had to connect to someone else who'd beaten the other version. So, like, if you had White 2, they had to have Black 2, and then you both had to have completed the game, and you connect, and you can unlock that extra difficulty mode. It was really convoluted, but it existed. And I just kind of think, why don't you just have difficulty options? Don't even do anything special, just change the levels of the Pokemon, of the the gym trainers and gym leaders and random trainers you fight. Just alter the levels a little bit differently, just to kind of make it a little bit more challenging. And then with the hard mode, get rid of all the tutorial stuff completely, because they know it. I don't know, just like that. But they don't. And as I say, they attempted a difficulty option once, and then they've never even tried to do it since. If anything, the games have got easier. Or like with Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, the difficulty is just kind of up and down. Yeah, difficulty has been a bit of a weird one with Pokemon. Moving on to, I know, like with you, Ryan, I think you said that you never really had that much of a fondness for Gen 2 because you got into Gen 3 first. And obviously...
I got into Gen 3 first, and it's the difficulty curve was dialed back a little bit.
Yeah.
So and it's not that it was like, oh, I went to sort of Gen 2 or 1 or 2 and went to 3, and it's like, oh, this is easier, and I prefer it easier. It's like, I was in Gen 3, and then I went to Gen 2, and it's like, holy shit.
Yeah.
That is a spike.
Yeah. But like with you, and obviously Matt, who's not really played anything other than Let's Go, I suppose, as more of a traditional Pokemon game. What was your experience like with the game? How did you enjoy it as a game in general? And obviously,
I don't dislike Gen 1 and 2, because I've romped most of the way through Red and Blue. I've played a bit of Yellow. I've played Crystal, or not Crystal. I keep saying Crystal because we just last, but I've played Gen 2, like Silver, a couple times, whether it be the remake or the original. I don't dislike it. It's just partly that I like to go through a bit more casually, and with the games that followed and the generation that followed, them being a little bit more casually difficult, it's a bit of a turnoff for me. I appreciate the games, but if someone was like, you have to play a Pokemon right now, you have to play a Pokemon game right now, I would not reach for Gen 2.
I would say that Gen 4 is more difficult personally. I mean, I tried to do a blind Nuzlocke in Gen 4 in Platinum, and I got to the first gym, and the Craniados, like the little dinosaur type thing, just so hard, and he's so fast, and it was just killing everyone. And I was like, I can't do this. This is the first gym. I think Gen 4 is probably the hardest one.
I think I skipped over Gen 4, because I was like, it was Gen 3, and then I did a little bit of Gen 5 at one point.
Yeah.
And then I was in on Gen 6, and I skipped Gen 7.
So you've been kind of hit and miss with it?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, because at the end of the day, it's all still Pokemon games. They introduce new Pokemon, but it's like,
yeah, I think with Pokemon, like, they've never really gone that into story. They tried with Gen 7 to introduce a bit more story, and they kind of made it a bit too RPG, where it was, like, really bogged down in story. Personally, I think Gen 5 is where they did it a little bit better, because, I mean, you probably remember this, Ryan, but, like, in Gen 5, you kind of have the whole enemy team where they're like, using Pokemon for fighting's bad, and it was the all kind of like, is this right? Getting Pokemon to fight? Is it basically just cockfighting?
Yeah,
And
where
they
they just brought it into question. It was like, huh.
Yeah, and it's like, actually, is this really an enemy team? Because they make a fair point.
Right.
I mean, obviously, you resolve your differences with the team by fighting Pokemon, which seems very counterintuitive. We think fighting Pokemon are bad, but we're going to fight you with Pokemon.
Versus the Gen 6, where it's like, oh, they don't have a point. This dude's like, I'm killing everything.
Yeah. But
Time
like,
to reset the universe. It's like, holy shit, dude. Calm down.
in Gen 5, I think it would have been better if instead of fighting Pokemon with the enemy team, you just had like fist fights with them. So the trainers come out and then you use your attacks.
But actually, it's like uses low kick.
Pokemon
Uses
trainer had abused uppercut.
Finish him.
Yeah. I say they did kind of undermine the story a little bit by having the Pokemon fights, and that was what the Pokemon team were against. And then they just kind of skipped the story in the end because it turned out like, oh, actually, no, we don't care about Pokemon fights. In fact, we're just an evil organization that wants to rule the world. And that was just a front. And then they just kind of think, well, it makes people think, so is this okay then? Because we're friends?
Good?
That mean fighting Pokemon is okay, I assume? And I think that's the closest they've got to having like a genuine, decent story. But otherwise, it's been a bit like, yep, okay, fight these gyms, fight the Elite Four, and maybe fight some kind of rival team for reasons.
Which is usually why I just sort of glaze over the story a little bit, because there's nothing really substance to it.
I kind of think the Game Freak don't know how to do stories, because like with Gen 7 where they tried to go like really into the story, some parts are quite interesting because she had like these rifts to other dimensions, which sort of implies how, for example with Red and Blue, they're both canonical, but they're separate like realities, I suppose.
Yeah.
And every trainer's experience is like a complete separate reality. So they kind of make every game canon, even the remakes and stuff. So like everything is all connected. And I appreciate that. But then there are other elements, like you go into the Ether Foundation and there's this woman and she's guiding you through. And then there's a cutscene and she goes, oh, we're going to go to this floor. I'm just going to press this button. And then she presses the button and you see the elevator move. And then that happens like 4 or 5 times. And you're like, you're seriously making a cutscene where you're making me watch a woman telling me she's going to press this button, press the button, and then move. You clearly don't know how to make stories work properly. That's why you make such simple stories that are exactly the same again and again. So yeah, what issues do you have? I know Matt's been quite quiet because I think Matt doesn't particularly like Pokemon games. So Matt, what's your issues with Pokemon games, and let's see if we agree that they're issues.
What's your damage?
What's your damage? Because, like, to be honest, I do have like a lot of issues with Pokemon as a series, and your problems are probably going to be justified. But for me, I enjoy the games. But yeah, anyway, tell me what you reckon.
I mean, this is basically just from playing Crystal. I mean, I don't know how indicative it is of the series as a whole, but I
mean, probably the games don't change much.
But yeah, that was kind of like one of the things. It's kind of like I played Let's Go last year and went back to Crystal, and I kind of felt like the story was the exact same thing, pretty much. I mean, you've got superficial details that have changed, but you are essentially a Pokemon trainer, well, an aspiring Pokemon trainer who chooses a starter, then goes down this road. There are trainers there, people who you look at and battle, and then you go to a gym, catching Pokemon on the way, and then you go to another gym, and it kind of seemed like exactly the same thing.
I mean, look, there's a reason we make jokes about them making the same game for 20 years.
Because
they did.
But outside of that, it's like the random battles were kind of pissing me off, and maybe that's an unfair criticism because I don't mind it so much in some other games. But when it comes to RPGs, I do kind of like have things that I prefer more than others. Like I really like fantasy and horror and steampunk and stuff like that. Stuff that is kind of like set in like a modern era, even if it does have like fantastical elements like little monsters you can catch, it just doesn't grab me as much. And I find myself a lot less engrossed in the setting than I would be in kind of like Final Fantasy, even when it went like more or less sci-fi like it did in 7. It still had that kind of thing that grabbed me, and this just didn't have that. And after I'd done the first gym, and you know, I was on my way to go to the second gym, it's kind of like I've played this before, you know, and this isn't as good an experience as Let's Go was, because obviously you have like the random battles in there as well, which you don't have in Let's Go, and I just didn't really like it for those reasons, really.
Yeah, I mean, like in terms of story, it is a continuation of the original, so I mean, you're still doing the same basic thing, going to 8 gyms and battling. And the side stuff is really the rival and the Team Rocket stuff. I mean, I sort of like both of those elements of the side story, because with Team Rocket, they are ridiculous. I mean, even in the original game, you've got Giovanni, who's like the head of this, you know, basically Pokemon mafia. But everyone else is just an idiot. Like, even in Yellow, when you're facing against Jesse and James, they're idiots. I mean, they're in the anime, they're idiots. In Crystal, in Gen 2, their leader has gone, because you beat him in the original game, and then he just disappears. So all you've got left is basically a team of idiots. And they're just going around, and they end up doing, well, quite frankly, stupid things. Like, you know, they're trying to get these slowpoke tails and stuff. They think, you know, they're taking over a radio tower for reasons, and reasons that are never really clear. So they're basically running around like headless chickens, and their ridiculousness sort of is kind of endearing in this. Because like in the post game, you find a member of Team Rocket who fights you, and then he's just like, oh shit, Giovanni's not around. Team Rocket's not around. Everyone's gone. What? And
it's like, we do crime for the sake of crime now.
Yeah, and it's like you just find this random Team Rocket member that doesn't realise that Team Rocket doesn't exist anymore. Like, you disbanded them in Johto, you got rid of the head, and it's just like, oh shit. But like in particular, I do like the rival, because the rival is a jerk. You hate him because, you know, he steals a Pokemon and he's just an absolute arse to you throughout the entire journey. But unlike, for example, Blue or Gary Oak or whatever you want to call him, he does actually get some form of character development, and he starts to loosen up and starts to realise that treating Pokemon as tools and not as friends is probably not a great idea. And they actually even do a nice little touch, because he starts out with a Zubat, as well as obviously the Pokemon he's stolen. And it goes into a Golbat, which is the evolution. And it's only when he realizes that you have to become friends with Pokemon in order to be able to be good with them, that's when the Golbat evolves into a Crobat. Now, in the game, that's a friendship evolution. So you have to be friends and have a close bond with the Pokemon in order for it to reach that third evolution. And they hold off on that and don't give him the Crobat until that final part of his story development. And for me, that makes him probably my favourite rival in the series, because they do actually include that story development in there. And there's actually a little bit...
Oh, yeah, it's great.
Yeah. There's actually a little bit of extra story as well that was cut out. I can't remember if it was cut out from Gen 2 or Gen 4, but Silver, your rival, is Giovanni's son. And that's another element of the story, so there is that Team Rocket link.
Okay, so here's the thing with that one. There is a Celebi that was given away in an event
Yeah,
that
and it's
triggers the in-game event where you meet Giovanni and you see him interact with Silver, and you get that whole thing like explicitly stated.
yeah, but they never did the event, or at least
No, they
never-
did.
No, they didn't do outside of Japan, did they? I think it was just Japan.
Oh no, I have it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like I still have that Celebi sitting in my Gen 4 games specifically to do that every time I replay them.
Oh, right, okay. So yeah, that's Gen 4 then they cut out of. So I
Yeah.
think in Gen 2 they just had the Celebi event where you go to the tree with the GS ball and then you unlock the Celebi, but I think that was just Japan exclusive, right?
Yeah, that was Japan exclusive because it was based on their cell phones at the time.
Yeah. But it's amazing because that GS ball thing was just... Do you remember the cartoons from... the anime from that time? With the GS...
No, I know the story, but I wasn't watching that at the time.
Yeah, basically they introduced the GS ball, which was like considered this most important thing like in the world, and this ball was really special and important. And then
Just
for
disappears.
series, yeah, and then for like multiple series, they follow around this GS ball and it gets passed to and fro between people, and then they end up giving it to Professor Oak, and it's never mentioned again. It's just completely forgotten about, and it's just the dumbest thing. And part of the reason might be because they cancelled the event, outside of Japan, so it never really became much of a thing. But I just find it funny that they have this GS ball for no reason. But yeah, the story, as you say, I can appreciate that because the story is basically the same. I mean, even in the new games, you've got stadiums instead of, like these, just gym houses, I suppose, or just gymnasiums. You've got proper stadium events. And instead of an Elite Four, you've got something that's a bit different. But it is still, in essence, the main game. You've got some more character development with the rivals, which is good. And instead of having just like an evil team, it's a bit different. It kind of works differently because they're just fans of one of the rivals, so they're not actually evil at all. They're just idiots, basically.
Yeah.
And it kind of works well because like the rival team, basically, and like the actual rivals, everything all focuses on the gym challenge, and that's it. Even the legendaries and stuff ties into the gym challenge. Everything is basically centered on that one story rather than having just these random offshoots which they had in the past.
Right.
And that more streamlined story kind of fits, but it's still basically the same story. And so I can see the legitimate complaint about that. And wild battles, yeah, I agree with that. I mean, Let's Go sort of fix that by making them visible in the wild so you can avoid them. And you even have that in Sword and Shield. You see them out in the wild. There are random battles, but there's like a little exclamation mark that appears. And it's only like a few seconds after that that the random battles become active. And they only are active in that part of the grass that you see the exclamation mark. So if you want to avoid battles, you can. Similarly, in caves and stuff, and in water, you don't really have... Oh no, in water you have those random battles, but in caves, you don't have random battles. You only have visible Pokemon. And
Right.
that is such an improvement, because in the older games, like pre-Let's Go, all you would do is just activate repels just to avoid random battles. And
Yeah.
when you're doing that, it means you've got a problem. It means that, that's not a good mechanic.
Well, and this just goes back to, when we touched on Let's Go for one of our specialist subjects, we want Let's Go versions of the older regions because, it would improve those experiences.
Definitely. I mean, what about you, Ryan? I mean, Matt, were those just like your only main issues with it? Just like mechanically, you don't like the random battles and the setting and that kind of thing? And the story?
Well,
Or the issues you had?
yeah, that's pretty much 100% of the game there. But yeah, that was pretty much my issues with it. I just couldn't get into it at all.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, like, the Pokemon series has kind of improved certain things, like HMs have been cut out, and now random battles have been improved like a millionfold. But, you know, it's still following the same issues story-wise, and even though things like HMs have been removed, you know, they still have these kind of arbitrary roadblocks. Like, sometimes they're okay, but sometimes it's like, in the new games, for example, you'll go down a path, and this NPC will talk to you saying, oh, this rock looks nice. And then you'll stop speaking to him, and then it'll send you back in the opposite direction. It's like, okay, so you're telling me I can't pass because this guy wants to continually talk to me about this fucking rock. Really?
It's a nice rock.
It's a nice rock. I mean, it's not HN, so I don't need a special ability, and I don't have to use a moveset on a Pokemon, sure. But it's still like an arbitrary roadblock, and it feels stupid. I mean,
at least the sheep is based in reality.
Yeah, I mean, like, the sheep thing's fine. It's like, okay, there are some sheep blocking it here, and, you know, you don't want to disturb them, which happens in reality, and it's also a nice little thing and kind of makes sense. It's like, okay, I don't want to disturb all these sheep that are sleeping here. I'll just go around. That makes sense. But then when you've got it where you've got, like, a random NPC just saying asinine shit to you, it's kind of like, that's not good. It's stupid. And Pokemon's always done that, whether it's by HMs or whether it's just shit like, I think it's Gen 4 where it's like, oh, here are a few Slowpoke that I can't get past until I get a random flute or something to make them move. Or like, I can't proceed here because it's too foggy. Right, okay, whatever, mate. And yeah, it's just kind of shit like that. Anyway, that's the main series. We briefly mentioned them, but let's move on to the side games. So what are your experiences with the side games? I mean, I know with you, Matt, it's pretty much just Pokemon Go?
Yeah.
Aside from any other stuff?
Yeah, just Pokemon Go and the one that we covered for this month.
What about you, Ryan and Steve?
Just Go, really.
Yeah. You not played any stadium games or anything?
No, I didn't, because I really didn't have Pokemon as a kid.
All right.
Oh, boy.
I bet Steven's played quite a few.
So let's see. Okay, just what I have right now: Pokemon Stadium, Pokemon Stadium 2, Pokemon Puzzle League. I think I've got a copy of Pokemon Conquest kicking around somewhere. Both of the trading card games, one of which was Japan exclusive. Like, you want to talk about Pokemon side games? I got you covered.
All right. So yeah, there's quite a few, and they did have quite a foray into a lot of different genres. Like, you've got Pokemon racing games, you've got basically an on-rail shooter with Pokemon Snap, sort of.
Conquest is a strategy game.
Yeah. So they've definitely done like a lot with the series. I mean, we won't dwell on them too much because, I mean, there's such a variety that we'd just be talking even longer than we already have done. So we'll save those for other podcasts, and I'm sure they'll pop in. But like the ones that we focused on this time were the pinball games, specifically Pokemon Pinball 1. Right, now Pokemon Pinball 1 is based on just the first generation, I believe, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Pokemon Pinball 2 is based on Gen 3, I want to say.
Yeah, because it's Pinball Ruby and Sapphire.
Pinball Ruby and Sapphire, you're right. Yeah. I can't remember the name. I've not played the second pinball game. So yeah, what did you all think to Pokemon Pinball?
I enjoyed it more than Crystal.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty solid pinball game.
I actually very much liked it. There was only one thing that was irritating about it. Two irritating things was there were two tables, and one of them is absolutely terrible, which would be the red table. And there's a weird delay on the flippers that I don't quite understand. Like, you get used to it pretty quick, but initially it's like you hit the button and nothing happens, and then your ball goes down the hole, and then your flipper flips. And it's like, why?
Yeah, I think I kind of noticed that at first, but I kind of got used to it. I just kind of got the impression that I was pretty terrible at it because, honestly, when it comes to pinball games, I'm not really that into pinball games. I don't really enjoy playing them. I can play them and enjoy them in short bursts, but I think Yoku's Island Express is like the closest I've got because it's basically a Metroidvania with pinball mechanics.
Right.
And then there are some small kind of areas that are more like mini pinball tables as like a kind of a side puzzle thing.
So what you're saying is when it comes to pinball, you're not a wizard.
No, I'm not.
Ah,
But yeah, I mean, like pinball, I think it's fine. I think it's okay in short doses. I don't dislike them, but I couldn't spend a long time playing pinball.
well, see, that's the nice thing about Pokemon Pinball is it doesn't feel like I have to just sit here and play pinball and go for the high score. It's like, oh, you go in there, you catch a Pokemon, and you know what? I caught a Pokemon. I'm good.
Yeah, I think you catch the Pokemon, and it's quite cool. It's got some, nice sprites and stuff. It looks cool. You catch Pokemon. It's quite a nice little idea. As you say, like the fact that it's got two tables is a bit disappointing, and one of them's not particularly great. It can, but I still think it's probably my second favorite pinball game. That's a proper pinball game. After Sonic Spinball, of course.
Oh, of course.
I really like pinball games. I always have. Like, the very first two games that I ever downloaded for the Switch, like not stuff that I had on cartridge, but the ones that I downloaded were both pinball games. And
Pinball FX?
one was Pinball Effects, the other one was, I think, the Stern pinball game. Don't quite remember the name.
With Pinball Effects, did you get the Alien DLC?
I didn't buy any DLC. I only played the free tables.
Oh, okay. Because I downloaded the Pinball Effects, and then I paid like a couple of euros or whatever it was for the Alien tables, just to play them, and they're pretty cool.
I do really like pinball games, and Pokemon Pinball was one of the, I'd say, below average in terms of like the pinball games that I've played before. I still preferred it to Crystal, but just the lack of variety kind of killed it for me. And I guess I'm kind of like used to more modern pinball games with a lot of the modern stuff that you get in them. They're a lot more realistic in terms of like ball physics and stuff like that. This one was a bit disappointing for me, but I did still enjoy it for like what it was. It just could have done with being a lot more. And I know you can unlock Pokemon, fill up the Pokedex. I can't imagine anyone would want to play it long enough to actually fill up the entire Pokedex, though, personally.
Oh, certainly not.
Yeah. I kind of think that the catching mechanic and filling the Pokedex is a really good mechanic in the game, but because of the fact it's only got two tables, it kind of makes you feel like, yeah, but no. I think they should have had maybe at least 8 tables or something and have them themed around the gyms. So like have a rock-based table, have a water-based table and stuff like that, and opt for that kind of approach and catch the Pokemon that way maybe. Or like have a Pokemon table for each typing or for a couple of different typings, or just something to add a bit of variety, because as you say, there's not really enough variety there that you would really want to catch them all. I mean, the capture mechanic's good and it's a nice little hook to keep you going, but you probably wouldn't want to keep going anyway, just through boredom. Not that
I
it's
don't
a
know. I kind of want to fill out the Pokedex.
Yeah, but you wouldn't do it all in one session.
No, you do it in like 2 Pokemon at a time.
No, you do like a few Pokemon maybe, then you leave the game for a bit and maybe next week come back, catch another few Pokemon.
Yeah.
You do it over the course of like a year or two maybe.
Or just do a Pokemon a day.
Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't necessarily do like it all, sequentially, like you do it, catch like 20, 25 Pokemon, then next day.
I want to see a speedrun of Pokemon Pinball.
100% speedrun.
What, like a 3-day long stream?
Yeah.
I mean, I played for half an hour.
It does exist. I imagine there are exploits.
I played it for half an hour and I caught 4.
Yeah, I think I just caught a few. I played it for maybe about the same amount of time. And I played it for half an hour and I thought, I think I've pretty much seen everything this game has to offer, apart from literally filling the Pokedex. But
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought.
yeah, I did. I played a fair amount. I played like 15 minutes of each table, more or less. I split my time between the two. As you say, like one of the tables a bit shitty, the other one's less shitty. And I was like, okay, I feel I'm done with this. But yeah, I mean, I say it's a decent enough pinball game. I don't know if the second one is like a lot better in terms of variety and a lot, an increase in that longevity. But as a basis, it's okay. It's just there isn't that much there.
I didn't even know that we had a second pinball game because I was playing. I'm like, man, this game needs more tables, but could honestly deserve a sequel easily. The one thing I did not like, I can't lie. The one thing I really didn't like, and I got used to it, but it killed me more than once, or I lost a ball to it more than once, was the way the screen, it doesn't scroll, it just transitions to the upper half of the table. And I realized this was a Game Boy game, but it's like, god dang, the DS would have handled that much better with the two screens at least.
You know what I just saw, which I think would have been good, is you remember how in Let's Go, the game corner is not functional because they wanted to remove all the links to gambling? What they should have done is they should have made Pokemon Pinball playable.
That would have been fun.
Or something.
Oh, yeah.
Way of getting coins. And, like, you get points and then it gives you tickets or something instead, like in the arcades. Because this is the kind of game, Pokemon Pinball, where I think it would work well as like a bonus game in a main game or in another game rather than as a game in itself.
Yeah, I would have been disappointed if I had paid for it.
Yeah, if I'd have bought this and played it, I'd have been, as you say, you play half an hour and then you think, okay, I'm done with this. But having it as like a mini game that you can just like do and just do a bit of and actually have a reason to do it, to give you the ability to buy items or Pokemon or whatever in the game corner, I think that would have worked quite well. But there you go. That's why we should work at Game Freak instead.
Yeah.
Right? We could actually make a good Pokemon game.
Yeah. Right, well, I think we've out-Pokemoned ourselves for the moment. We've been talking about Pokemon for a good couple of hours at least. So I think it's time to wrap everything up and we'll move on to our specialist subjects.
Okay, so we are on to the specialist topics, and my Doom mod of the month is the imaginatively titled Pokemon Doom. You would expect there to be quite a lot of Pokemon themed Doom maps, but there are actually only really a couple, and this is the only one that I could find like a working link to. So basically it's new levels as well as new sprites, which if you remember from the Disney one, it was like literally just new sprites. So this one is kind of like a total conversion, and it has an interesting way of tying itself into Doom. There are kind of like two things you can choose from at the start, Prologue and Pokemon World, basically kind of like 2 episodes, but the Prologue is only like 1 level long, and it starts off basically like a normal Doom level, and you've just got like your regular enemies and stuff like that. And in the center of the map you see like this big grey rectangle. You can't really see much of it because it's like quite high. You just see this rectangle, and throughout the level you're going up and up and up, and eventually you come across this big rectangle from above, and it turns out that it's a Game Boy. So you're looking down at this Game Boy, and basically what you do, you drop onto the Game Boy and walk onto the screen, and that is the end of the prologue. It kind of like takes you into the Pokemon world. So it's an interesting way of kind of like trying to tie it into like the main Doom thing. And going into the Pokemon world, you get like all new items, all of the health and armor pickups, they're all kind of like little potions and stuff like that. And you have all the enemies being Pokemon. And actually, there is quite a lot of them. It is a bit brutal to start off with. They do give you unlimited ammo, which is good. But you are kind of assaulted by a hell of a lot of different Pokemon when you go in. And something that this mod actually does that Game Freak doesn't bother doing is they actually give all the Pokemon their own kind of like sounds as well. Like they all say their name. You don't just get the random sound that you get in like in all the other Pokemon games. You know, running around going like Charmander, Charmander, Pikachu, Pikachu. And it's actually quite difficult. Like I said, you do kind of like get assaulted by all of them. And I think there are quite a few levels, but unfortunately there seems to be like a bit of a bug where I couldn't get past that first level because you need the Pokédex to continue into the next area. And the Pokédex is in Professor Oak's laboratory, but it is up on like a table. And try as I might, I cannot get onto that table. I mean, as you know, Doomguy can't jump. And you can't reach it via normal means, and there doesn't seem to be any way to get on top of that table. So I wasn't able to progress past that first level. But what I did play was actually really fun, and I really enjoyed myself. I may have to go back with like cheats and try and find a way to give myself that Pokédex so that I can continue. But from what I've played so far, it's an interesting mod and definitely one that I would recommend.
Interesting.
Nice though, Pokemon game that you like then.
Yeah. As you can imagine, it's kind of like a really small download as well. So search for Pokemon Doom, you'll find it. I think I downloaded it from Doom World and just drag and drop it onto GZ Doom or use whatever Doom level loading thing. But yeah, recommend it. It's a lot of fun.
Nice.
Alright, well, that sounded like an interesting mod map. So, moving on to mine. Mine is a little bit of a cop-out because it's not actually an official Pokemon game. But I've already covered Pocket Monsters for the Mega Drive, which is also not an official one, so fuck it, we've already broke past traditional format by this point. But what I'm actually covering is Pokemon Crystal Plus, which is a ROM hack of Pokemon Crystal by me. It's actually undergoing development. I made a first version of it, but I'm doing like a version 2 with adjustments and some new Pokemon and things. And then I'll eventually finish it, hopefully at some point soon. But the semi-finished version is available and out there for people to play. But basically what it is just like sort of a fixed version of Pokemon Crystal. So basically all the stuff that I don't like about Pokemon Crystal is altered. So I mentioned, like when we had a discussions about the gym leaders not having any Johto Pokemon. This not only increases the roster size, but it gives them a bigger team as well. So all the gym leaders have 4 Pokemon, all the Elite Four have 5 Pokemon, and then the Kanto ones have 6 Pokemon. So we've got substantially harder teams for the gym leaders, and their focus is specifically around Johto Pokemon. Just so you can actually fight against new Pokemon rather than Pidgeys and whatnot. I've also made it so that all of the 250 Pokemon, 251 or whatever it is, are available in one game. It also includes a Celebi event as well, so you can actually get the GS Ball and do the Celebi thing. I've mixed around the wild Pokemon levels and the wild Pokemon areas, so that you get different ones. So for example, you can get a Mareep early on, which obviously can help you against a flying gym. And, you know, there's a variety of different Pokemon throughout. I've added in Team Rocket changes. So instead of the generic executives that you fight in the main game, there's actually Jesse and James, which are in there. So this is more of a continuation of Yellow than the original games. And I've also kind of made some other changes as well. So like, for example, in Kanto, all the Pokemon are higher levels, so they're not really low levels like in the original games. There's some other remixes where, like, if you choose a certain Pokemon, it will increase your difficulty. So Chikorita, for example, is hard mode. Cyndaquil is easy mode, and Totodale's normal mode.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because Cyndaquil blasts through the early gyms quite easily. So it's an obvious easy mode. Whereas Totodile doesn't really have any advantages, and Chikorita kind of gets fucked. So the game is kind of on a difficulty scale based on those Pokemon anyway. So your rival battles are altered. So your rival will have different Pokemon and different Pokemon levels. So just like little things like that. So there's a lot of variations, a lot of tweaks, and a lot of changes. Like Flash has been removed from the game, so you don't have to use like the HM Flash. And you don't have to use any HMs at all in Kanto. For example, all the dark caves, they all just have light. So you can see, because nobody likes Flash.
Right.
Yeah. There's also some other additions as well. Like, because Flash isn't removed, there's like a sort of an elite tower, which is called the Shattered Tower, which may be familiar, if you're familiar with the Shattered community. And basically some members of the Shattered Pokemon trainer community have been added as trainers. They've basically told me what they want their team lineup to be, and they have teams in the game. And they've got movesets and stuff, so you've actually got proper competitive movesets and competitive style trainers.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That is actually really cool.
Their levels kind of advance. They start kind of high, and then they get harder and harder and harder until you get to me, who will obviously be the hardest one and the final challenger. So once you're later on in the game, you can face those high-level challenges, so you've got something to do, like, after Red, really. So yeah, it's just stuff like that. And as I say, I'm working on new Pokemon, so, like, there's some different forms that are going to be in there as well, which are probably going to be readapted because I'm in the process of changing them, that I might add some extra forms. Like, obviously, you've got things like Farfetch, so I might alter Farfetch to his Galar form and have Sirfetch'd in there as well, just to make it a little bit more interesting. And then, because we're low on ghost types, and things like the ghost form of Corsola might be added. So my revamp of extra Pokemon might actually be expanded in a post-Gen 8 universe. But yeah, just stuff like that, really. So it's just an enhanced version of Crystal to something that I consider to be, better, really, and a little bit more difficult.
You get done with it, Alex. You give that a run.
Yeah, you actually get Pokeballs straight off the bat, so as soon as you leave as soon as you pick your starter, you can start collecting Pokemon, so you don't have to wait until, pissing around before you start getting Pokeballs. And you get EXP share as well, like as soon as you've delivered the egg. So quite a few changes. I'd say, like at the moment, it's like in the kind of a mid-version 1 point, but when I get time to finish it, I'll eventually finish it.
Yeah, sounds cool.
Yeah, I'll say it's basically just making my favourite game in the Pokemon series just something even better, I suppose. Right, so that's my bit. So let's move on to Stephen's RPG of the month.
My choice for this month, since my thing is RPGs and Pokemon is kind of all RPGs, I actually went for Pokemon Coliseum to focus on because it's a different kind of Pokemon game and it's definitely interesting. Basically, the way it works is you don't have random encounters. The Pokemon you capture are actually Pokemon you're stealing from the bad guys because they stole them from somebody else.
Yeah, so you're actually stealing them, but it's more like Robin Hood. You're a good kind of thief.
Right. It's like, this evil team steals Pokemon from their trainers, and you used to be one of them, but now you're working against them. I think it's funny for so long. It's like, you can't throw Pokeballs in a trainer battle. Don't be a thief. And then the entire game is based around that. I mean, it's pretty fun. All of your battles are double battles. So that changes things. And your starters are Espeon and Umbreon, which actually ends up working out really well. It's a fun little game. I definitely recommend if you can track down a copy or
Yeah, it's very expensive either. I think it's relatively cheap.
Yeah, I think it is pretty cheap. Now the bonus disc, that's the expensive one.
Yeah. The only main issue I had with Colosseum was there aren't that many Pokemon throughout the games. Because you're having to capture the Pokemon from other trainers, pretty much whenever you play it, you'll probably play with the same team because there's only a very limited number of Pokemon you'll catch, which kind of affects replayability compared to, like other Pokemon game where it's like, hey, there's 800 or whatever Pokemon now, let's, have only Bug or only Psychic, or we'll choose this Pokemon because I've never used him before. With this, it's just kind of like, I'll stick with like Espeon, I'll stick with what's his face, I'll stick with this one, and you kind of just go through it in the same motions each time.
It was definitely limited, and from what I understand, they expanded it in the sequel, XD Gale of Darkness, but I haven't played that one.
Yeah, neither have I. I wanted to because, I did enjoy my time with Colosseum. I don't think I would ever replay it for, the reason I basically just said is I'd play through it in the exact same way. But I definitely want to play the sequel at some point. I think it'd be quite cool.
Well, maybe we should play that for the podcast at some point.
Yeah, we'll have to add it to the list at some point. Maybe the next Pokemon episode. Pokemon come out every year. Maybe we should have a Pokemon one every year.
Please don't.
But yeah, I mean, Coliseum is definitely worth checking out. If you can find a copy or acquire it by other means, it's definitely worth looking at, especially if you're a fan of the Pokemon series and you want to see how they handle a different setup.
This actually even might be one that you would enjoy, Max. It's more of an RPG than it is a Pokemon game.
What system is it on?
GameCube.
The GameCube.
Yeah, it's basically the sequel to the Stadium games. It's just they went all in on that story mode rather than all the stuff they had in Stadium.
Yeah, it's more of a story thing, and you don't have like wild encounters and stuff like that. As I say, it's basically just like these double battles, and you're stealing Pokemon, and they have darkness auras, and you have to clear that and whatnot.
It's kind of like the thing that was introduced in Pokemon Go recently, where you have, shadow Pokemon that you capture from Team Rocket.
All right. I've not played Pokemon Go recently, but that sounds like it's the same thing.
It's very similar.
But yeah, I mean, as we kind of covered in the podcast, I know that you're not a particular fan of the general Pokemon game formula, but like the Pokemon Colosseum and presumably Gale of Darkness setups are a lot more like traditional RPGs.
Yeah.
I'll look into them.
Okay, thanks for that, Steve. Okay, now we've just got Ryan left. So Ryan, what you got for us?
Oh, it's hard pressed to call this a obscure console, especially since apparently it's not that obscure, except for a special edition of it. Thematically with the topic today, this is a Pokemon console. It is not the N64 Pokemon console. It is the Sega Pico. I am assuming that's how that's pronounced. Might be Pico. Calling this a console is really a stretch. It's a children's entertainment, edutainment media interface. It's essentially a little laptop that plays some educational games. But surprisingly, it actually got a Pikachu edition, and it got like 6 Pokemon-themed games on it.
How did they manage that?
I don't fucking know.
Yeah, it's something that happened and makes no sense. I'm guessing because it wasn't a console and it was more of an educational device. Nintendo were a bit open to allowing their stuff.
That's all I can assume. I mean, there's not a whole lot to say about it. It had a sort of a manner of touchscreen interface.
When did it get released? Was it pre or post Dreamcast?
The Pico originally released in like 93. Way before, but it went for almost a decade. The Pokemon games were dropping pretty quick after. Let me pull up the actual list of games. Because there was a second, there was a predecessor to the Pico, and it was the Pico Advance, I think it was called, and that got like 5 more Pokemon games in the early 2000s.
Because what I'm thinking is, if you remember, like, do you remember when Sega used to make consoles, and then they stopped making consoles and went to other competitors and just did games?
You have a valid point.
Because if it was kind of during the Dreamcast era, it could have been during that transitional phase where maybe they were starting to put their stuff on other consoles and getting out of that industry. And if that's the case, then maybe that's why the Pico got some stuff, because they stopped making consoles. That was just an edutainment thing. And they just thought, okay, we'll stick some Pokemon-related things on there. I don't know, I'm just guessing. I'm talking out of my ass.
The Sega Pico came with a, I'm not even going to pronounce it, Pokemon Advanced Generation. I've begun Hiragana and Katakana. I don't know. These are all going to be weird edutainment games.
Yeah, I've seen some videos of the edutainment games for the Sega Pico, and they look kind of shit, to be honest. But I mean, so, you know.
They are for tiny children's.
Yeah.
And really, at that point, all it was, hey, we want to make learning not gimmicky, but they want it to catch children's attention.
Yeah.
And with the rise of Pokemania, I'm sure Steven has played all these games finish to end. Finish to end, start to finish. Beginning to end. I'm a little tired.
You seem to believe there were Sega systems in my house, good sir.
Yeah, I'd say fair enough.
He's definitely done all the Pokemon mini games. There's definitely been those ones at least, because they're Nintendo ones.
There you go. Official Sega Pokemon games. And console.
Nice one.
How whack.
Awesome. Okay, well, with that out of the way, thanks a lot, Ryan, and I believe you have something else for us.
Yes, this month we are going to be hosting another giveaway. It is going to be a legit original copy of Pokemon Gold for the Game Boy. It will be coming in a reproduction case. It is not a reproduction cart, though. There is no user manual, but the game works.
That's the main thing.
That's the important part.
There will be a link to that on our Facebook page.
Yes, and there will also be a link to that on our Twitter.
And there will also be a pinned link to it on our Discord. Well, we had a Discord before, but it was just for our private banter. But we're opening it up to the listeners as well, so feel free to join it. There will be a link on the website and all the various podcast sources to our Discord. So feel free to join it and have a chat with us. We'll start that giveaway, and next month we will announce the winner. Well, next month, next podcast. Good luck to all of you out there. Right, well, with that out of the way, all that's left is to just kind of relax, take a deep breath, and say goodbye. We'll see you at Christmas. Or during
Goodbye.
the festive season. Bye.
Goodbye.
I want to be the very best, like no one ever was. To catch them is my real test. To train them is my cause. I will travel across the land, searching far and wide, each Pokemon to understand the power that's inside. It's you and me. I know it's my destiny. Pokemon.